Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the Dragon Sage, who reunited the Pokemon World Naruto x Cynthia x Diantha Pokemon. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Crossing of Worlds. Pain erupted behind Naruto's eyes as consciousness returned to him. The sensation was familiar, reminiscent of his first attempts at Sage Mode when natural energy had overwhelmed his system. His body felt weightless yet impossibly heavy, as if gravity itself couldn't decide how to handle him. He forced his eyelids open, immediately regretting the decision as harsh light stabbed into his retinas. White stone surrounded him, not the familiar trees and grass of the valley of the end where he'd been meditating. The air carried unfamiliar scents, incense, stone dust, and something else entirely alien to his senses. "He's waking up," a woman's voice said from somewhere nearby. Not Sakura, not Hinata, not anyone he recognized. Naruto attempted to sit up, his muscles protesting with every movement. His chakra felt wrong. It was there, swirling within him, but somehow altered, as if it had been translated into a different language. "Easy now," the voice cautioned. "You appeared out of nowhere in quite a flash of light. I'd say take it slowly." Naruto's vision finally cleared enough to see the speaker, a woman with light brown hair styled in an unusual upward sweep. She wore a lab coat over a white shirt and green skirt, with an expression that mixed scientific curiosity with genuine concern. "Where?" Naruto's voice came out as a croak. His throat felt parched, as if he hadn't spoken in days. The woman offered a bottle of water, which Naruto accepted gratefully. As he drank, he studied his surroundings more carefully. Stone walls rose around him in what appeared to be some sort of tower. Through arched windows, he glimpsed a cloudy sky and rolling hills unlike any landscape in the 5 great nations. "You're in Celestial Tower," the woman explained, watching him carefully. "I'm Professor Araya Juniper. I was conducting research on the tower's unusual energy patterns when you appeared. Rather spectacularly, I might add." She paused, studying him with evident scientific fascination. "And you are?" "Naruto Uzumaki," he replied automatically, still trying to process his situation. "What village is this? I don't recognize the architecture." Professor Juniper's expression shifted to one of deeper curiosity. "Village. This is Mistralton City, though the tower stands outside its limits. We're in the Unova region." She hesitated. "You seem disoriented. Where are you from?" Naruto's mind raced. Nothing she said made any sense. Unova, Mistralton. These weren't names from any geography he'd studied, and he'd become far more attentive to such things after the war. "Konoha," he answered, watching her face for recognition. "The Hidden Leaf Village, in the Land of Fire." The complete lack of comprehension in her eyes confirmed what Naruto was beginning to suspect: he wasn't in his world anymore. He closed his eyes, reaching inward. "Kurama," he called mentally, seeking the familiar presence of the 9-tailed fox. Only silence answered. The connection was there. He could feel it, but stretched impossibly thin, as if reaching across a vast distance. A sudden noise broke his concentration, a soft, melodic cry unlike anything he'd heard before. Opening his eyes, Naruto found himself staring at a floating creature. About 2 feet long, it resembled a blue and black dragon with red wings like crescents. Its yellow eyes regarded him with unmistakable intelligence. "What is that?" Naruto asked, instinctively reaching for a kunai that wasn't there. "That's Drutagon," Professor Juniper answered, her eyes widening. The dragon-like creature floated closer to Naruto. "He's usually quite aggressive with strangers, especially those who appear suddenly. This is unusual behavior." The creature, Drutagon, circled Naruto slowly, emitting soft trilling sounds. Despite its fierce appearance, with sharp claws and teeth, Naruto sensed no malice from it. In fact, it seemed almost reverential. "Is it some kind of summon?" Naruto asked, cautiously extending a hand. "Or a transformed person?" Professor Juniper's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "It's a Pokemon. Surely you've..." She stopped mid-sentence as something extraordinary happened. When Drutagon made contact with Naruto's outstretched fingers, orange energy flickered across Naruto's skin, the unmistakable manifestation of his Sage mode activating involuntarily. The marking around his eyes appeared briefly before fading, but not before Drudagon's eyes widened and it emitted a sound that could only be described as awe. "Remarkable," Professor Juniper whispered, frantically pulling a device from her pocket and pointing it at both of them. "The energy readings are off the charts. What are you?" Before Naruto could answer, the tower itself seemed to respond. Ancient carvings along the walls, dragons intertwined in circular patterns, began to glow with a soft blue light. The stone beneath them trembled slightly. "This has never happened before," Professor Juniper said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and apprehension. "These carvings are thousands of years old. They've never reacted to anything in all our studies." Naruto stood cautiously, finding his balance returning. The strange resonance with his Sage mode was unsettling but not painful. If anything, the natural energy in this place felt purer, more concentrated than what he was accustomed to. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm very far from home." Professor Juniper insisted on running what she called basic scans before they left the tower. Naruto submitted to her curious devices, which seemed advanced in ways even Konoha's technology wasn't. No chakra, but something else, something she called electromagnetic fields and biometric analysis. "Your readings are unlike anything I've ever seen," she explained as they descended the spiral staircase of Celestial Tower. "You're human, but your energy signature has similarities to certain Pokémon types. Particularly Dragon and Psychic." Naruto nodded as if this made perfect sense, though none of it did. He'd gathered that Pokémon were the creatures that populated this world, living beings with elemental powers not unlike chakra-based jutsu. Professor Juniper had explained that humans and Pokémon lived together, sometimes as partners in something called battles, sometimes as companions, sometimes in the wild. It was as they reached the ground floor that the commotion began. Shouts echoed from outside, followed by a deafening roar that made the tower's ancient stones vibrate. "That sounds like..." Professor Juniper rushed toward the entrance, Naruto following close behind. Outside, chaos reigned. A massive creature with 3 heads, each sporting vicious teeth and glowing red eyes, was rampaging through a group of people trying to subdue it. The beast was primarily dark blue and black, with each head attached to a neck that resembled an arm. Its wings beat the air furiously as it fired multicolored beams of energy from its mouths. "Hydreigon," Professor Juniper gasped. "Something's driven it into a rage. This is bad. They're nearly impossible to calm once they're like this." Naruto assessed the situation quickly. The people attempting to control the creature were using other Pokémon in the effort, calling out commands that resulted in various elemental attacks. None seemed effective. If anything, they further enraged the 3-headed dragon. "What's wrong with it?" Naruto asked, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the rampaging beast. "Hydreigon are notoriously difficult to train," Professor Juniper explained, keeping a safe distance. "They're called the brutal Pokémon for a reason. But this one seems unusually distressed. See how it keeps looking back at the tower." Indeed, between attacks, the central head kept turning toward Celestial Tower with an expression Naruto recognized, not rage, but fear. Whatever had activated the ancient carvings had also affected this creature. Without hesitation, Naruto stepped forward. "Wait," Professor Juniper called. "You can't approach a rampaging Hydreigon without Pokémon of your own. It's suicide." But Naruto was already moving. Years of shinobi training kicked in as he dodged a purple-black beam of energy that scorched the earth where he'd stood moments before. The people and their Pokémon paused in their attacks, stunned by the newcomer's speed. Naruto stopped about 20 feet from the raging dragon, making no aggressive movements. Instead, he closed his eyes and did what had become second nature to him. He entered Sage mode. The natural energy flowed differently here, richer somehow, but his body remembered the process. When he opened his eyes, the world had changed. He could see energy flows, including the chaotic pained swirls within Hydreigon. "You're hurting," Naruto said softly, knowing the creature wouldn't understand his words but might comprehend his intent. "Something scared you. Something from the tower. Something to do with me." The central head of Hydreigon snapped toward him, all 3 pairs of eyes focusing with laser intensity. It roared, but didn't attack. Naruto took another step forward. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm lost, just like you're confused. Maybe we can help each other. What happened next astonished everyone present. The Hydreigon's posture changed, its wings lowering slightly as its central head dipped in what almost resembled a bow. The side heads, though still bearing teeth, no longer seemed poised to attack. Naruto reached his hand out, palm up, as he would to a wary animal in his own world. That's it. No one has to get hurt here. Professor Juniper watched in disbelief as the fearsome dragon-type Pokémon, known for its uncontrollable rage and destructive power, slowly lowered its central head until it touched Naruto's outstretched hand. A pulse of energy passed between them. The orange markings around Naruto's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and Hydreigon's eyes reflected the same light. Then, as suddenly as the rampage had begun, it ended. The three-headed dragon settled onto the ground, all signs of rage dissipated. Impossible, someone in the crowd whispered. Naruto turned to find a group of people staring at him. They wore uniforms that suggested some kind of official capacity, black and blue clothing with badges displaying a stylized P. A tall man with spiky red hair stepped forward. In 15 years as an international police officer, I've never seen anything like that. Hydreigon, don't just calm down. Naruto let his sage mode fade, feeling suddenly exhausted. It was scared, not angry, he explained. Something about the energy in the tower was hurting it. Professor Juniper approached cautiously. Naruto, this is Officer Flint of the International Police. He's specialized in handling dragon-type incidents. She turned to the officer. This young man appeared inside Celestial Tower under unusual circumstances. I was about to take him to my laboratory for further examination. Officer Flint's eyes narrowed slightly. Appeared? How exactly? Before Juniper could answer, Naruto swayed on his feet. The world tilted sideways as exhaustion claimed him. The last thing he saw before consciousness faded was the Hydreigon moving protectively closer, its three heads forming a barrier between Naruto and the others. Dreams and reality blurred as Naruto floated through fractured memories. Kurama's chakra, stretched thin across an impossible distance. Sasuke's face at the Valley of the End. Their final conversation before Naruto had gone to meditate. The strange pulse of energy that had enveloped him before everything changed. Unusual brainwave patterns. Never seen readings like. Dragons in the preserve are all behaving strangely since. Voices filtered through his semiconsciousness. Naruto tried to open his eyes, but his body refused to respond. It wasn't genjutsu. He could still feel his chakra. Could still sense the natural energy around him. But something was blocking his return to full awareness. Then, a new voice, closer, directed at him specifically. I know you can hear me. Dragon Sage. The voice was female, low and melodious, with an accent he couldn't place. It seemed to resonate not just through his ears but directly into his mind. The crossing was not by chance. The dragons have waited for your coming. When you wake, find the Draconids. Find the meteorite caverns. Find me. With those cryptic words echoing in his mind, Naruto finally broke through the fog of unconsciousness, gasping as his eyes flew open. He found himself in a modern laboratory, lying on something resembling a hospital bed. Machines beeped softly around him, monitoring his vital signs. Through large windows, he could see a grassy field where various creatures, Pokémon, he reminded himself, roamed freely. Welcome back, Professor Juniper said, appearing beside his bed with a tablet in hand. You've been unconscious for nearly 14 hours. How do you feel? Naruto sat up slowly, testing his limbs. Better. Clearer. He looked around the lab. Where am I now? My research facility outside Nuvma town. We brought you here after you collapsed. She studied him with undisguised scientific curiosity. Your recovery rate is remarkable. Your cells regenerate at nearly 3 times the normal human rate. Naruto nodded absently, distracted by the memory of the voice in his dream. Dragon Sage, he murmured. What does that mean here? Professor Juniper's expression sharpened. Where did you hear that term? In a dream, while I was unconscious. A woman's voice called me that. The professor set down her tablet and pulled up a chair. Naruto, I need you to be completely honest with me. Where are you from? Really? Naruto considered his options. In his experience, the truth, however unbelievable, usually caused fewer problems in the long run than lies. And this woman had helped him when she could have just as easily called for his detainment. "I'm from another world," he said simply. "A place called the Elemental Nations. I was meditating at a place called the Valley of the End when something pulled me here. A surge of energy I couldn't control." He expected disbelief, perhaps even laughter. Instead, Professor Juniper nodded thoughtfully. "The energy readings from your arrival match theories about ultra-dimensional wormholes," she said. "We've had incidents before, creatures from other dimensions appearing in our world. We call them ultra beasts." She paused. "But you're human, or appear to be, which makes your case unique." "I am human," Naruto confirmed. "But I'm also a Jinchuriki, a vessel for a powerful entity called the Nine-Tailed Fox. And I've mastered Sage Mode, which allows me to draw in natural energy." He decided to keep the details of his status as the child of prophecy to himself for now. "That am I. GHT explain your affinity with dragon types," Professor Juniper mused. "They're highly attuned to natural energy themselves. The way you calmed Hydreigon was unprecedented." She turned to a computer terminal and pulled up an image that made Naruto's heart race. It was an ancient stone tablet, covered in carvings that depicted a human figure surrounded by dragon-like creatures. Orange markings around the figure's eyes were unmistakable. "This was discovered in Dragonspiral Tower, the oldest structure in Unova, over a century ago," she explained. "Archaeologists have debated its meaning for generations. It depicts what some call the Dragon Sage, a human with the ability to commune with dragon Pokémon on a spiritual level." Naruto studied the image. The figure did look disturbingly similar to him in Sage Mode. According to legend, Professor Juniper continued, the Dragon Sage appears in times of great imbalance to reunite the scattered dragons and restore harmony to the world. "And you think that's me?" Naruto asked skeptically. "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "But your appearance, your abilities, and the reaction of both Celestial Tower and Hydreigon all suggest something significant." She hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Since your arrival, dragon-type Pokémon across the region have been behaving unusually. Reports are coming in from Dragonspiral Tower, the village of dragons, even from trainers with dragon Pokémon miles away. They're all becoming more active, more aware. Something is awakening them." Before Naruto could respond, the laboratory door slid open. Officer Flint entered, accompanied by a woman Naruto hadn't seen before. She wore a striking outfit of blues and reds with a cape that resembled dragon wings. Her dark hair was styled in a way that emphasized her sharp, assessing eyes. "Professor Juniper," Flint nodded. "Our guest is awake, I see." The woman beside him stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Naruto with an intensity that reminded him of Sasuke during their most serious moments. "So you're the one causing all the commotion," she said. Her voice sent a jolt through Naruto. It was the same voice from his dream. "I am Zinnia of the Draconid people. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, have a lot to explain." Zinnia insisted on speaking with Naruto alone, much to Professor Juniper's disappointment and Officer Flint's suspicion. They eventually agreed but remained visible through the laboratory's glass walls, watching carefully. "The Draconids have awaited your coming for millennia," Zinnia said without preamble once they were relatively private. "Though I admit, you're not what I expected." "I get that a lot," Naruto replied. "You were in my dream." She nodded. "A technique passed down through my people. The ability to communicate through the dream state with those who possess the dragon heart, what you might call an affinity for dragon energy." "How did you find me so quickly?" "I've been monitoring energy fluctuations across the regions for years," she explained. "When you crossed dimensions, it created a ripple effect that every Draconid felt. I was already on my way to Unova when you calmed Hydreigon." That confirmed what I suspected. Naruto studied her carefully. Her manner was direct, almost abrupt, but he sensed no deception in her words. "You called me Dragon Sage," he said. "Professor Juniper showed me an ancient carving that looks, well, a lot like me. But I don't know anything about your world or these dragons you keep talking about." Zinnia's expression softened slightly. "No, you wouldn't. The prophecy speaks of a sage from beyond the Veil of Worlds, one who walks with natural energy as a companion rather than a tool." She reached into a pouch at her side, and withdrew a small object that gleamed in the laboratory lights. "This is a keystone," she said, holding up what appeared to be a crystalline orb swirled with rainbow colors. "It resonates with certain Pokémon, allowing them to achieve Mega Evolution, a temporary transformation that enhances their power beyond normal limits." She placed it in Naruto's palm. The moment it touched his skin, the stone pulsed with light. And Naruto felt a familiar surge, like chakra, but different, more primal. "Just as I thought," Zinnia murmured. "You have the ability to channel energies in ways similar to Mega Evolution. But it comes from within you rather than from an external bond." Naruto handed the stone back. "Look, I appreciate that you think I'm some prophesied sage, but I need to get back to my own world. People are depending on me there." Zinnia shook her head. "The dimensional crossing that brought you here wasn't random, Naruto. Our world is fractured. Once, long ago, all regions were united under the guardianship of the original dragon. But after what we call the Great Dragon Scatter, the regions became isolated from each other, developing independently with minimal contact." "Shish." He gestured toward a map on the laboratory wall depicting separate landmasses with names like Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos. "The balance between regions has been deteriorating for generations," she continued. "Legendary Pokémon that once maintained natural harmony are becoming erratic. Team Flare in Kalos nearly caused global devastation. Team Galactic in Sinnoh almost ripped apart the fabric of space-time itself. These are symptoms of a deeper imbalance. And you think I can fix all that?" Naruto asked skeptically. "I think you were brought here for a reason," Zinnia replied. "Whether you accept that reason or not is up to you. But consider this. The same force that pulled you here might be the key to sending you back." Before Naruto could respond, a commotion erupted outside the laboratory. Through the windows, they could see a crowd gathering around something in the research field, something large and blue. "That's impossible," Zinnia whispered, rushing toward the exit. "It never leaves Dragon Spiral Tower." Naruto followed her outside, where Professor Juniper and Officer Flint were already staring in astonishment at the creature that had appeared. It MB led a massive blue-gray dragon with accents of red and black. Its presence exuded ancient power, making the air itself feel heavier. "Drutagon?" Naruto asked, recognizing similarities to the smaller dragon he'd met in Celestial Tower. "No," Professor Juniper breathed. "That's Zekrom, one of the legendary dragon Pokémon said to embody ideals. It hasn't been seen outside Dragon Spiral Tower in over a century." Zekrom's crimson eyes fixed on Naruto, and the great beast lowered its head in what could only be described as acknowledgement. Electricity crackled around its turbine-like tail, casting blue light across the assembled humans and Pokémon. "It's acknowledging you," Zinnia said quietly. "Zekrom represents ideals and conviction, the power to create a new future. It seems to recognize that in you." The legendary dragon extended one massive claw, palm up, in a gesture unmistakably similar to an invitation. "I think," Officer Flint said slowly, "it wants you to go with it." Naruto hesitated. Everything in this world was still alien to him, and his priority should be finding a way home. Yet the presence of this ancient creature stirred something within him, a resonance with his own nature as someone who had always fought for his ideals and convictions. "If I go with it," he asked Zinnia, "where will it take me?" "To Dragon Spiral Tower, most likely," she answered. "The birthplace of Unova's dragon legends. Perhaps to show you something only the Dragon Sage can see." Naruto made his decision. "I'll go. But not alone." He turned to Professor Juniper. "Will you come with me? I still have a lot to learn about this world." The professor's eyes lit up with scientific excitement. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." "I'm coming too," Zinnia stated firmly. "The Draconid Opal have waited too long for this moment." Officer Flint sighed. "I suppose someone needs to keep this official. I'll alert headquarters that we're investigating a legendary Pokémon incident." Zekrom watched this exchange patiently, electricity occasionally arcing between the projections on its back. When Naruto stepped forward, the massive dragon lowered itself to the ground, clearly offering to carry them. "I've never heard of Zekrom allowing humans to ride it," Professor Juniper whispered as they cautiously approached. "There are many things happening now that have never happened before," Zinnia replied. her eyes never leaving Naruto. The Dragon Sage has returned. The world is changing. As Naruto placed his hand on Zekrom's metallic hide, he felt a jolt of energy unlike anything he'd experienced before, ancient power, tempered with wisdom and purpose. For a moment, just a moment, he thought he felt Kurama stirring across the dimensional divide, equally intrigued by this new development. I don't know if this is where I'm meant to be, Naruto thought as they carefully mounted the legendary dragon. But until I find a way home, I'll do what I've always done, try to help. Zekrom spread its wings, electricity crackling around its body as it prepared for flight. With a roar that seemed to shake the very air, the embodiment of ideals launched skyward, carrying the unlikely Y group toward Dragonspiral Tower and whatever revelations awaited the newly arrived Dragon Sage. Dragonspiral Tower loomed against the afternoon sky, an ancient structure that predated all modern civilization in Unova. Its weathered stone spiraled upward like a massive dragon's tail coiled around itself, disappearing into mist near its peak. As Zekrom approached, Naruto could feel the tower's energy, similar to what he'd experienced in Celestial Tower, but vastly more powerful. It's the oldest structure in Unova, Professor Juniper explained as they flew. Perhaps in the entire Pokémon world. Legends say it's where the original dragon first made contact with humans. The original dragon? Naruto asked. A being of immense power, Cynthia answered. It was said to embody both truth and ideals in perfect balance before it split into Zekrom and Reshiram during an ancient conflict. Zekrom circled the tower once before descending to a platform near its middle section. The legend. Airy Pokémon landed with surprising gentleness, allowing its passengers to disembark before taking flight again, circling the tower as if standing guard. It's not coming with us? Naruto asked, watching the dragon patrol the skies. Zekrom brought you here for a reason, Cynthia said. But some paths must be walked alone. The entrance to the tower stood before them, an archway carved with intricate 8 dragon motifs that seemed to shift subtly as they approached. Naruto felt a pull toward the darkness beyond, an inexplicable certainty that answers awaited him inside. Officer Flint activated a flashlight as they entered. Stay close. The interior has never been fully mapped. People have gotten lost in here for days. The air inside was cool and still, carrying the weight of millennia. There, footsteps echoed against stone floors worn smooth by time and the passage of creatures long forgotten. Light filtered through narrow windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the ancient air. The carvings here, Professor Juniper noted, running her fingers over wall inscriptions, are in a language that predates all known human writing systems. Linguists have spent generations trying to decipher them. Naruto studied the symbols, surprised to find they seemed vaguely familiar. Some of these look like the sealing jutsu patterns we use in my world, he observed. Especially these spiral formations. As if responding to his words, the carved spirals began to glow with a soft blue light, similar to what had happened in Celestial Tower but more focused. The illumination spread, owing a pattern upward along the spiral staircase that led deeper into the tower. It's showing us the way, Cynthia whispered. They followed the glowing path, climbing higher into the ancient structure. With each floor they ascended, Naruto felt a growing resonance with the natural energy that permeated the tower. Without conscious effort, he found his sage mode activating, orange markings ring around his eyes as he absorbed the tower's energy. Remarkable, Professor Juniper murmured, recording everything with a small device. Your physiological response is triggering reactions in the tower itself. On the 7th floor, the glowing path led them to a chamber unlike any other they had passed. Perfectly circular, its dome ceiling was painted with constellations unfamiliar to Naruto. In the center stood a stone dais, and upon it rested what appeared to be a fragment of black crystal the size of a fist. Cynthia inhaled sharply, a shard of the dark stone. Part of Zekrom's original form before it was awakened. I thought Zekrom was already awakened, Naruto said, confused. We just flew here on it. The legendary dragons exist in multiple forms, Officer Flint explained. When dormant, they take the form of orbs. The light stone for Reshiram, the dark stone for Zekrom. The one outside is the active Zekrom, but this. He gestured to the fragment. This suggests there's more to the legend than we understood. Naruto approached the dais, drawn to the crystal shard. As he neared, the fragment pulsed with blue electricity, resonating with his sage mode energy. "It wants you to touch it," Zinnia said quietly. Hesitantly, Naruto reached out. The moment his fingers contacted the dark stone fragment, the world around him dissolved into swirling energy. Images flooded his mind. Not memories, but visions. A single massive dragon, neither black nor white but both and neither, soaring above a unified land. Asterisk. A terrible conflict between two brothers, their Ideolo. Geese tearing the original dragon asunder, creating Zekrom and Reshiram. Asterisk. A third fragment, gray and lifeless, falling away unnoticed, what would later become Kurum. Asterisk. Regions fracturing, separating, losing contact with each other as the dragon's influence waned. Asterisk. And throughout it all, a spiral symbol like the one on his stomach, the seal that contained Kurama, appearing again and again at crucial moments. Asterisk. The visions shifted to more recent events. A white-haired man with glasses and scaled features experimenting on Pokémon, combining their DNA in ways that echoed Orochimaru's forbidden techniques. Asterisk. A tear in reality, pulsing with the combined energy of the tailed beasts, creating a bridge between worlds. Asterisk. Dragons across all regions sensing a disruption in the natural order, awakening from ancient slumbers. Asterisk. With a gasp, Naruto pulled his hand away from the crystal, returning to the present moment. The others were staring at him with varying expressions of concern and curiosity. "What did you see?" Professor Juniper asked eagerly. Naruto took a shaky breath. "The original dragon. The splitting. But also," he hesitated, "I think I know how I got here. And I'm not the only one who crossed over from my world." He described the white-haired man from his vision. "Kabuto," he explained, "a shinobi from my world who specializes in genetic manipulation and resurrection techniques. If he's here, and experimenting on Pokémon," he left the implications unspoken. Officer Flint's expression hardened. "We've had reports of genetically modified Pokémon appearing in remote areas. Most dismissed them as exaggerations or misidentifications. If what you saw is accurate, this could be a serious threat." "There's more," Naruto continued. "The vision showed dragons awakening across all regions. Not just Unova. Something bigger is happening." Zinnia nodded grimly. "The Great Gathering. It's part of the Dragon Sage prophecy, when the scattered dragons begin to sense he worlds rebalancing and respond to the sage's presence." A low rumble shook the tower, dust falling from the ancient ceiling. Outside, Zekrom's roar echoed across the sky, joined by another, higher-pitched cry. They rushed to the windows to see Zekrom engaged in what appeared to be an aerial dance with another massive dragon, this one predominantly white with accents of blue and red. "Reshiram," Professor Juniper breathed. "The Dragon of Truth." The two legendary Pokémon circled each other, not in combat but in a pattern that resembled a greeting between old friends. Lightning from Zekrom and flames from Reshiram intertwined in the sky, creating a spectacular display visible for miles. "The dragons of truth and ideals, united again after centuries of separation," Zinnia said. "Because of you, Dragon Sage." Naruto watched the aerial display with mixed emotions. The majesty of these creatures was undeniable, and their connection to natural energy resonated with his sage abilities. Yet he couldn't shake the urgency of what he'd seen in the vision. Kabuto in this world, experimenting on Pokémon, potentially creating dangers no one here was prepared to face. "I need to learn more about this world," he said decisively. "About Pokémon, about how they battle, about these regions. If Kabuto is here causing trouble, I can't just focus on finding my way home. I have a responsibility to help." Professor Juniper placed a hand on his shoulder. "I can teach you the basics of being a Pokémon trainer. It's not the same as being what did you call it?" "A shinobi," Naruto supplied. "A ninja, right. It's different, but there are similarities in the bonds formed and the strategies used in battle." Officer Flint nodded. "I'll alert the international police about this potential threat. We have agents in every region who can keep watch for unusual activity." "And I," Zinnia added, "will contact the Draconid elders and other dragon lore keepers across the regions. The Blackthorn clan in Johto, the Dragon Village in Unova, the ancient temples in Kalos, all must be warned that the prophecy is unfolding." As they spoke, a small shape flew through the window and circled Naruto curiously. Unlike the massive legendary dragons outside, this was a small, shark-like creature with a blue-gray body. Most strikingly, instead of the usual blue coloration others of its kind possessed, this one shimmered with a golden hue. A shiny Gible, Professor Juniper explained, seeing Naruto's questioning look. It's an extremely rare coloration variant, and it seems quite interested in you. The Gible landed on the stone floor before Naruto and looked up at him expectantly, making a sound that resembled a happy growl. I think, Zinnia said with a small smile, you've just found your first Pokémon partner. Naruto crouched down to the small dragon's level. Hey there, he said softly. I'm new around here, but I could use a friend who knows this world better than I do. What do you say? The Gible responded by leaping up and bumping its head affectionately against Naruto's chin, a gesture that reminded him poignantly of the way small toads from Mount Myoboku would greet him. That settles it, Professor Juniper laughed. Here, you'll need this. She pulled a red and white spherical device from her bag and handed it to Naruto. It's called a Pokeball. It creates a special bond between you and Gible. Naruto examined the device curiously before gently touching it to Gible's head as instructed. The small dragon dissolved into red energy that was absorbed into the ball. It shook 3 times in his palm before emitting a soft click. Congratulations, Officer Flint said. You're officially a Pokémon trainer now. Outside, Reshiram and Zekrom continued their aerial display, now joined by smaller dragons that had been drawn to the legendary Pokémon's presence. The sky above Dragonspiral Tower filled with flying creatures of all shapes and sizes, a gathering unseen in centuries. From a distant ridge overlooking the tower, a hooded figure observed the spectacle through high-powered binoculars. White hair gleamed beneath the hood as thin lips curved into a calculating smile. So, Kabuto Yakushi murmured to himself, Naruto Uzumaki has found his way to this world as well. How very convenient. He adjusted his glasses, the lenses catching the light from the dragon display. This changes my timeline, but not my ultimate goal. Beside him, a creature that resembled a fusion between a human and a Pokémon waited silently for commands. Its skin bore scale-like patterns, and its eyes glowed with unnatural intelligence. Monitor him, Kabuto instructed the hybrid creature. Learn his movements, his allies, his weaknesses. But do not engage, not yet. The creature nodded once before melting into the shadows with inhuman grace. Kabuto cast one last glance toward Dragonspiral Tower, where the legendary dragons continued their reunion ceremony. A dragon sage, is it? He chuckled softly. Well, Naruto, let's see what kind of sage you become in a world where the rules are very, very different. With that, he vanished into the forest, leaving no trace of his presence except a faint impression in the grass where he had stood. In the days that followed his experience at Dragonspiral Tower, Naruto began his crash course in living in the Pokémon world. Professor Juniper's laboratory in Nuvma Town became his temporary home as he absorbed information about Pokémon types, battle strategies, regional differences, and the complex ecosystem of this new reality. His Gible, which he'd learned was a dragon, ground-type Pokémon that could eventually evolve into the powerful Garchomp, proved to be an enthusiastic if somewhat overexcitable partner. The small dragon followed Naruto everywhere, occasionally chewing on furniture or digging holes in the laboratory floor, much to Professor Juniper's dismay. He has quite the personality, the professor observed as she watched Naruto attempting to coax Gible down from a bookshelf where it had become fascinated with a spinning ceiling fan. Dragon types are challenging for beginning trainers, but this one seems particularly attached to you. Naruto finally managed to retrieve his partner with the promise of food. We understand each other, he said, scratching Gible under its chin. He's got a lot of energy and doesn't like being told he can't do something. Reminds me of myself at that age. Professor Juniper smiled. Well, you're making remarkable progress for someone who knew nothing about Pokémon a week ago. Your battle instincts are particularly impressive. It was true. While Naruto had initially struggled with the concept of Pokémon battles, finding them both similar to and entirely different from shinobi combat, his strategic mind had quickly adapted. His experience in reading opponents' movements and exploiting environmental advantages translated well to directing Gible in practice battles against the professor's research Pokémon. What surprised Naruto most was how his Sage Mode abilities seemed to enhance his connection with Gible. When he activated even a partial Sage Mode during training, Gible seemed able to anticipate his commands before he voiced them, moving with increased precision and power. There's something there we don't fully understand, Professor Juniper had noted during one such session. The energy readings when you're in that state show a resonance between you and Gible that's typically only seen in Mega Evolution scenarios. Now, as the sun set over Nuvma town, Naruto stood at the edge of the research field behind the laboratory, practicing a meditation technique Cynthia had taught him before departing for Hoenn to consult with her elders. Unlike his familiar shinobi meditation, this practice focused on establishing harmonic resonance with the natural dragon energy that permeated this world. He felt Gible settle beside him, the small dragon mimicking his cross-legged posture with comical seriousness. Despite the weight of his situation, stranded in an alien world with Kabuto potentially causing havoc, Naruto couldn't help but smile. There was something inherently optimistic about the Pokémon world, a sense that cooperation between species was not just possible but fundamental. "You're adapting well." The voice came from behind him. Naruto turned to find Officer Flint approaching, his international police uniform exchanged for casual clothing. "Thanks," Naruto replied, rising to his feet as Gible immediately ran to investigate the newcomer. "Any word about Kabuto?" Flint shook his head. "Nothing concrete. We've increased surveillance at research facilities and known hotspots for illegal Pokémon experimentation. But if he's as skilled as you say, he won't be easy to find." Naruto nodded grimly. Kabuto had evaded detection by entire ninja villages. The authorities here wouldn't stand much chance. "I have some news, though," Flint continued, gently pushing away Gible as it attempted to sample his shoelaces. "Professor Sycamore from the Kalos region has expressed interest in meeting you. He's the world's leading expert on Mega Evolution and has been researching ancient legends about dragons for years." "Kalos?" Naruto asked, recalling the map he'd studied. "That's pretty far from here, isn't it?" "Yes, but there's a direct flight from Mistralton City. Professor Juniper thinks it would be valuable for you to meet him, especially given what you experienced with the Dark Stone fragment." Naruto considered this. He'd been immersing himself in learning about this world, but finding Kabuto and understanding his own purpose here would require more than what Unova alone could offer. "When would I leave?" "Tomorrow morning, if that works for you," Flint replied. "I've arranged everything with Professor Juniper. She's even prepared a basic trainer's kit for you, Pokeballs, medicines, travel supplies." As if summoned by her name, Professor Juniper emerged from the laboratory carrying a blue backpack. "I see Officer Flint has told you about Professor Sycamore's invitation," she said, handing Naruto the bag. "Everything you need for your journey is in here, including a Pokédex, a device that records information about Pokémon you encounter." Naruto accepted the backpack with genuine gratitude. "Thank you for everything, Professor. I wouldn't have survived my first week here without your help." "It's been my pleasure," she assured him. "The opportunity to study your unique UE abilities and connection to dragon Pokémon has been the highlight of my research career." Her expression grew more serious. "But there's something else you should know before you leave." She withdrew a tablet from her lab coat pocket and showed Naruto a news article. The headline read, "Mysterious Trainer Calms Rampaging Hydreigon, Dragon Sage Prophecy Fulfilled." Below was a blurry image of Naruto in partial Sage Mode touching the Hydreigon's central head outside Celestial Tower. "Someone recorded your encounter," Professor Juniper explained. "The video has gone viral across regional networks. Dragon-type enthusiasts, mythology researchers, and curious trainers are all talking about the Dragon Sage, who appeared from nowhere." Naruto frowned. "That complicates things. It means you'll need to be careful." Officer Flint agreed. "Not everyone who'll be looking for you has good intentions. There are organizations that would exploit your abilities if they could." "Like Team Plasma?" Naruto asked, recalling what Professor Juniper had told him about the group that had tried to separate people and Pokémon in Unova. "Team Plasma has been mostly dismantled," Flint replied. "But there are others. Team Rocket operating across Kanto and Johto, remnants of Team Galactic in Sinnoh, Team Flare in Kalos. And those are just the ones we know about." Gible, sensing Naruto's concern, butted its head against his leg in a gesture of solidarity. Naruto picked up the small dragon, finding comfort in its unwavering loyalty. "I've faced worse odds," he said with a determined smile. "And I won't be alone." He nodded to Gibble, who puffed its chest out proudly. "There's one more thing," Professor Juniper said, reaching into her pocket. She withdrew a small crystalline object that Naruto recognized immediately, a keystone like the one Zinnia had shown him. "This is extremely rare," she explained. "But Zinnia insisted you should have it. With the right Pokémon holding a compatible Mega Stone, this can activate Mega Evolution. Given your natural energy abilities, your potential with this could be extraordinary." Naruto accepted the keystone, feeling its resonance with his own chakra. "Thank you. I'll use it wisely." Quote, as the three stood in the fading daylight, a sense of momentous change hung in the air. Naruto's brief period of adjustment and learning was ending. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter of active engagement with this world and its challenges. "Get some rest," Professor Juniper advised. "Your flight to Kalos leaves early, and from what I've heard about Professor Sycamore, you'll need your energy to keep up with his enthusiasm." That night, as Naruto lay in bed with Gibble curled up at his feet, he reflected on how rapidly his life had changed. Just weeks ago, he had been meditating at the Valley of the End, processing the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War and contemplating his future in Konoha. Now he was in an entirely different dimension, bonded with a creature that wouldn't have seemed possible in his world, and apparently fulfilling an ancient prophecy about dragons and sage powers. "I will find a way back eventually," he promised himself. "But until then, I have responsibilities here too. If Kabuto is creating dangerous hybrids, if this world needs the dragon sage for something important." He drifted off to sleep with these thoughts swirling in his mind. Unaware that across dimensional boundaries, efforts to locate him were already underway. In a laboratory hidden within Orochimaru's abandoned northern hideout, Sasuke Uchiha A.N.D. Kakashi Hatake watched as complex sealing arrays glowed with chakra, attempting to trace Naruto's unique energy signature across the void between worlds. "Anything?" Kakashi asked, his visible eye focused intently on the arrays. Sasuke shook his head, his Rinnegan active as he scanned the dimensional frequencies. "Not yet, but there was a surge of familiar energy about a week ago. Wherever he is, he's using Sage Mode. That's our Naruto," Kakashi sighed. "Always adapting, always surviving." Sasuke's expression remained impassive, but a hint of determination showed in his heterochromatic eyes. "We'll find him, no matter which dimension he's fallen into." As if in response to his words, one of the sealing arrays pulsed brighter for a moment before settling back to its steady glow, a brief, tenuous connection across the infinite expanse of dimensional space. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2 Echoes of Prophecy. Mistralton City's airport buzzed with morning activity as cargo planes loaded supplies bound for distant regions. Unlike the technology of the elemental nations, these aircraft operated without chakra, instead relying on engineering principles that fascinated Naruto. He stood at the observation deck watching mechanics inspect a sleek passenger plane, its blue and white livery emblazoned with a stylized Pidgeot emblem. "That's your flight to Kalos," announced a cheerful voice behind him. Naruto turned to find Skyla, Mistralton's gym leader and chief pilot, approaching with a clipboard. Her vibrant red hair and blue flight suit made her easy to spot among the ground crew. "First time flying?" she asked, noting his intense observation of the aircraft. "First time in a machine like that," Naruto admitted. "Where I'm from, we have different methods of travel." Skyla's eyes sparkled with interest. "The mysterious dragon sage prefers Pokémon transportation. I hear you rode Zekrom itself to Dragonspiral Tower. Now that's what I call traveling in style." News traveled fast in the Pokémon world, especially news involving legendary creatures. In the weeks since his arrival, Naruto had grown accustomed to the occasional double take from strangers who recognized him from viral videos of the Hydreigon incident. "It wasn't exactly a scheduled flight," he replied with a small smile. "Is everything ready for today's departure?" "All set. Professor Juniper call Ed ahead to make sure you'd have a smooth journey." Skyla handed him a boarding pass. "We'll be taking off in 30 minutes. Your Pokémon should stay in its ball during the flight, but you can release it once we reach Kalos." Naruto glanced down at the luxury ball attached to his new trainer belt, a special container Professor Juniper had provided for Gible. He'd learned that most Pokémon traveled this way, though the concept still struck him as strange. Inside the ball, Gible existed in a state that the professor had described as energy conversion stasis, comfortable but aware. "Thanks for the arrangements," he said, shouldering his backpack. "I appreciate the help." Skyla waved off his gratitude. "Any friend of Professor Juniper's is a friend of mine. Besides, it's not every day I get to transport a legendary figure." She winked before turning serious. "Word of advice though, Kalos is different from Unova. More formal, more political. The Pokémon League there has deep connections to old aristocratic families. Just something to keep in mind." With that cryptic warning, she hurried off to complete pre-flight checks, leaving Naruto to contemplate what awaited him across the ocean. 7 hours later, the landscape below transformed from endless blue to the lush countryside of Kalos. From his window seat, Naruto marveled at the patchwork of vineyards, forests, and picturesque towns that seemed to belong in a painting rather than reality. In the distance, a gleaming metropolis rose from the central plains, Lumio's city, the heart of the Kalos region. As the plane descended, the city's most distinctive feature came into view, a towering metal structure that dominated the skyline, its elegant design reminiscent of a stylized Pokeball. "That's Prism Tower," explained the passenger beside him, an elderly gentleman who'd introduced himself as a Pokémon historian returning from research in Unova. "It houses Lumio's gym and serves as the city's power plant. Quite the engineering marvel." Naruto nodded politely, but his attention had shifted to something else entirely. As they approached the airport, his sage senses, which had been developing new sensitivity in this world, detected an unusual energy concentration in the city. Not threatening, but definitely powerful and unlike anything he'd encountered in Unova. The plane touched down with barely a bump, Skyla's expert piloting making the landing almost imperceptible. As passengers gathered their belongings, Naruto felt a familiar vibration from the luxury ball at his belt, Gible, eager to be released after the long journey. "Soon, buddy," he whispered, patting the ball reassuringly. Kalos International Airport proved significantly larger and more ornate than Mistralton's utilitarian facility. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and the floors gleamed with polished marble. Attendants in crisp blue uniforms directed travelers with practiced efficiency, while screens displayed arrivals and departures in multiple languages. Naruto followed the flow of disembarking passengers toward immigration, where an officer examined his trainer ID, specially created by Professor Juniper and the International Police to give him legal status in this world. "Purpose of your visit to Kalos?" the officer asked mechanically. "Research consultation with Professor Sycamore," Naruto replied as instructed. The officer's demeanor changed instantly. "Ah, you're expected. The professor sent a representative to meet you." He gestured toward the arrival hall. "Welcome to Kalos, Mr. Uzumaki." Beyond immigration, the arrival hall bustled with activity. Naruto scanned the crowd, unsure whom to look for until he spotted a young woman holding a digital tablet displaying his name. She wore a white lab coat over a simple black dress, with glasses and teal hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Mr. Uzumaki," she called as he approached. "I'm Sophie, Professor Sycamore's research assistant. Welcome to Kalos." She extended her hand in greeting, which Naruto shook with careful restraint, still adjusting to this world's customs. "Thank you for meeting me," he replied. "Just Naruto is fine." Sophie smiled professionally. "Of course. The professor is extremely eager to meet you. He's been practically bouncing off the walls since Professor Juniper's call." She led him toward the exit, continuing to brief him as they walked. "We've arranged accommodations at the lab's guest quarters. The professor thought you might appreciate being close to the research facilities given the nature of your visit." Outside, Lumio's city assaulted Naruto's senses with its vibrant energy. Unlike the natural, open spaces of Unova's cities, Lumio's presented a densely packed urban environment that somehow maintained an air of elegance. Circular in design, its streets radiated from prism tower-like spokes on a wheel, filled with cafes, boutiques, and galleries. People and Pokémon moved together in a sophisticated dance of urban life. The boundaries between human and Pokémon spaces blurred in a way that spoke of centuries of coexistence. It's a bit overwhelming at first, Sophie acknowledged, noting his expression. Especially coming from Unova. Lumiose has been continuously inhabited for nearly 2,000 years. Some streets you're walking on follow the exact paths laid down during the reign of King Az. A sleek black car waited at the curb, its driver opening the door as they approached. As Naruto settled into the leather seat, he finally released Gible from its luxury ball. The small dragon materialized in a flash of light, immediately shaking itself as if throwing off the sensation of confinement before looking around with curious eyes. "Oh," Sophie exclaimed, clearly surprised. "A shiny Gible. Those are extraordinarily rare." Gible puffed its chest proudly at the recognition before climbing into Naruto's lap to peer out the window at the passing city. "We found each other at Dragonspiral Tower," Naruto explained, absently scratching behind Gible's fin where the dragon particularly enjoyed attention. "He's been helping me understand this world." Sophie's scientific curiosity visibly piqued. "Professor Juniper mentioned your unusual connection with dragon types. The professor will be fascinated." She tapped something on her tablet. "We should arrive at the lab in about 15 minutes. Traffic permitting. Would you like to ask any questions about Kalos before we get there?" Naruto considered as Gible pressed its face against the window, leaving tiny smudges on the immaculate glass. "Professor Juniper mentioned something about Mega Evolution being important in Kalos." "What exactly is it?" Sophie's eyes lit up, clearly a topic she was passionate about. Mega Evolution is a temporary transformation that certain Pokémon can undergo during battle if they share a strong bond with their trainer and both possess specific stones, a key stone for the Tri-Ner and a corresponding Mega Stone for the Pokémon. She showed him an image on her tablet of a Garchomp, Gible's final evolution, alongside a fiercer, more angular version of the same creature. The transformed state enhances the Pokémon's natural abilities and sometimes even changes their type or ability. It's a phenomenon first discovered here in Kalos, though evidence suggests it occurred in ancient Hoenn as well. Naruto fingered the keystone Professor Juniper had given him, now attached to a wristband on his left arm. "And this is connected to the Dragon Sage legend somehow." Sophie's professional demeanor faltered slightly. That's really a question for the professor. Ancient legends are his specialty, not mine." The car turned onto a tree-lined boulevard, slowing as they approached a stately mansion converted into a research facility. Unlike the utilitarian design of Professor Juniper's lab, Sycamore's establishment exuded old-world charm with its wrought iron gates and classical architecture. As they pulled up to the entrance, the front doors burst open, and a man bounded down the steps with infectious enthusiasm. Tall and lanky, with wild black hair and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. He wore his lab coat with the casual air of someone who viewed it as a reluctant concession to professional standards rather than a defining uniform. "You must be Naruto," he exclaimed before the car had fully stopped. "Magnifique. Welcome to Kalos. I am Professor Augustine Sycamore, though please, just Sycamore is fine among friends, which I hope we shall become." His accent colored his words with a musical quality, and his entire being radiated such genuine warmth that Naruto couldn't help but smile in return. Gible, responding to the professor's energy, leapt from Naruto's lap to the ground as they exited the vehicle, circling Sycamore curiously. "And this must be your partner. A shiny Gible, how extraordinary." Sycamore crouched to the dragon's level. "Bonjour, petite dragon." Gible sniffed Sycamore's extended hand before giving it an experimental nibble, which the professor accepted with good-natured laughter. "Spirited one, isn't he? Come inside. We have much to discuss. And I've prepared a proper Kalosian welcome." The interior of the lab balanced scientific functionality with residential comfort. The entry hall opened into a bright space, where research assistants worked at various stations, monitoring equipment or caring for Pokémon. Unlike Juniper's specialized focus on Pokémon origins, Sycamore's lab seemed to encompass multiple research tracks simultaneously. They followed the professor through the main laboratory to a comfortable sitting room at the rear of the building, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a verdant research garden. A table had been set with an array of pastries, cheeses, and fruits that made Naruto's stomach remind him he'd eaten nothing but airline food all day. "Please, help yourself," Sycamore insisted, gesturing to the spread. Travel between regions can be exhausting, especially your first time. As Naruto sampled the unfamiliar delicacies, finding a particular fondness for something called a pan au chocolat. Sycamore settled into an armchair, his initial exuberance mellowing into focused scientific curiosity. So, he began, watching as Gibble investigated a bowl of berries on the floor. Specially prepared for Pokémon visitors. Professor Juniper has shared some remarkable observations about your abilities. This resonance with Dragon-type Pokémon, particularly in what you call Sage Mode, is unprecedented in our records. Naruto swallowed a bite of pastry. In my world, Sage Mode allows me to absorb natural energy and blend it with my own chakra, my life force, basically. Here, it seems to create a connection with certain Pokémon, especially dragons. Fascinating. Sycamore leaned forward, and this connection manifests physically. The markings around your eyes. In response, Naruto closed his eyes briefly, drawing in the natural energy that permeated even this urban environment. When he opened them again, the orange pigmentation had appeared around his eyes, and his pupils had taken on a slightly more reptilian appearance. Incroyable, Sycamore breathed, observing the transformation with undisguised scientific delight. And you feel differently in this state. I can sense energies more clearly, Naruto explained. In my world, it enhances all my abilities. Here, it seems to harmonize with something fundamental in Dragon Pokémon. As if demonstrating his point, Gibble immediately abandoned its berries and climbed into Naruto's lap, its body resonating with a faint orange glow that matched Naruto's eye markings. Sycamore produced a device from his pocket and scanned them both. The energy signature bears remarkable similarities to what we observed during Mega Evolution, that moment of resonance between trainer and Pokémon. He set the scanner aside, his expression growing more serious. Naruto, what do you know of the Dragon Sage prophecy? Not much, Naruto admitted, allowing his Sage Mode to fade. Professor Juniper showed me NT carvings that looked like someone in Sage Mode surrounded by dragons. Zinnia mentioned something about reuniting scattered dragons, but she didn't elaborate before leaving for Hoenn. Sycamore nodded thoughtfully. The Draconids guard their knowledge closely. But here in Kalos, we have our own records of the prophecy, dating back to the reign of King Az over 3,000 years ago. He rose and moved to a bookshelf, retrieving an ornate wooden box. From it, he withdrew a scroll case of obvious antiquity, handling it with reverent care. This is one of the oldest documents in our archives, he explained, carefully extracting a yellowed parchment. It was preserved in a shrine near what we now call the Master Tower, a site sacred to Dragon-type Pokémon. He unrolled the parchment on the table, revealing text in an ancient script alongside intricate illustrations. The central image showed a figure with distinctive facial markings standing between two massive dragons, one black, one white, ith hands extended toward each in a gesture of conciliation. The text speaks of one who walks between worlds, bearing the mark of the sage, who shall restore harmony when the original dragon's scattered children hear the call to reunite. Sycamore translated. For centuries, scholars debated whether this was literal or metaphorical. Some believed it referred to the legendary dragons of Unova, Eshiram and Zekrom, who were once a single entity. He indicated another illustration showing a massive dragon that resembled neither Reshiram nor Zekrom, but somehow incorporated elements of both. The original dragon, as the legends call it. When ancient brothers fought over ideals and truth, their conflict supposedly split this being into separate entities. I saw visions of this at Dragonspiral Tower, Naruto confirmed. But there was more to it than just Reshiram and Zekrom. There was a third fragment that fell away. Kyurem, Sycamore nodded. The empty shell left behind, representing the absence of both truth and ideals. But even this doesn't capture the full scope of the prophecy. He pointed to smaller illustrations surrounding the main image, stylized depictions of different regions. The ancient Kalosians believed that all dragon Pokémon, across all regions, originated from the original dragon's essence scattered throughout the world. The prophecy speaks of a time when his fragments of power would need to be reunited to prevent a great calamity. Gibble, as if sensing the gravity of the discussion, had grown unusually still in Naruto's lap, its eyes fixed on the ancient illustrations. What kind of calamity? Naruto asked. Sycamore's expression grew troubled. That's where interpretations diverge. Some texts suggest a physical disaster, tectonic upheaval, climate collapse. Others imply a spiritual catastrophe, the severing of bonds between humans and Pokémon. He carefully rolled the parchment. What concerns me more immediately are the signs preceding this prophesied event. He returned the scroll to its case before continuing. Unusual behavior among dragon Pokémon. Legendary Pokémon appearing where they haven't been seen for centuries. Disruptions in energy patterns at ancient sites. His eyes met Naruto's directly. All things that have been reported with increasing frequency over the past year, culminating in your arrival. The implications hung heavy in the air between them. If the prophecy was indeed manifesting, Naruto's appearance wasn't coincidental. He had been drawn to this world for a specific purpose. There's something else, Sycamore added, his voice lowering. Something Professor Juniper mentioned that aligns with our own observations. You said someone else from your world may have crossed over, someone experimenting with Pokémon genetics. Naruto nodded grimly. Kabuto Yakushi. In our world, he specialized in reanimating the dead and genetic manipulation. If he's adapting those techniques to Pokémon, then we face a potentially catastrophic threat. Sycamore finished. 3 months ago, one of our research outposts in the mountains reported finding a Pokémon with unprecedented genetic modifications, changes to T shouldn't be possible with our current technology. By the time my team arrived to investigate, the specimen had disappeared, along with all research data. A chill ran down Naruto's spine. That sounds like Kabuto's work. The timing aligns with your vision from Dragonspiral Tower, Sycamore agreed. If this Kabuto is attempting to harness dragon energy through artificial means, it could accelerate whatever cataclysm the prophecy warns against. Before Naruto could respond, the doors to the sitting room burst open. Sophie appeared, her usual composure shattered by obvious distress. Professor, she exclaimed, there's an incident at Lysandre Cafe. Someone's attacking the sealed vault. Sycamore leapt to his feet. The Mega Evolution Research Archives. Sophie nodded frantically. The police are responding, but reports indicate the attackers have unusually powerful Pokémon, possibly illegally modified. We need to go, Sycamore said, grabbing his coat. That vault contains irreplaceable data on Mega Evolution, including coordinates for undiscovered Mega Stones. Naruto stood, Gibble jumping to attention at his side. I'm coming with you. It could be dangerous, Sycamore warned. Naruto smiled grimly. Danger and I are old friends, Professor. Lysandre Cafe occupied a prime location in central Lumiose, its red-themed exterior making it instantly recognizable among the city's many establishments. As their car approached, the scale of the disturbance became apparent. Police barriers blocked the street while officers directed civilians away from the area. Above the cafe, black smoke billowed from what appeared to be an explosion on the lower levels. I don't understand, Sophie said as they parked behind the police line. The cafe has been closed since Team Flare was disbanded. The only thing still maintained is the secure vault in the basement. Which makes it the perfect target, Sycamore replied grimly. After Lysandre's disappearance, the international police seized all Team Flare research. The most sensitive materials, including everything related to Mega Evolution and Infinity Energy, were sealed in that vault pending review. A police CER approached as they exited the vehicle. Professor Sycamore, this area is restricted due to... He stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening as they fell on Naruto. You're the trainer from Unova. The Dragon Sage. Word traveled even faster than Naruto had realized. What's the situation inside? The officer hesitated only briefly before responding. 3 intruders breached the cafe approximately 20 minutes ago. They bypassed security using unknown methods and blasted their way into the basement. Officer Jenny is coordinating our response, but the intruders have some kind of modified Pokémon we've never encountered before. Modified how? Sycamore pressed. They appear to be hybrid forms. Part Pokémon, part something else. Our attacks barely affect them. Naruto and Sycamore exchanged knowing glances. This had Kabuto written all over it. I need to get in there, Naruto stated. The officer shook his head. Absolutely not. This is a police matter. Those creatures are from my world, Naruto interrupted. Or at least, created using techniques from my world. Your officers don't know what they're dealing with. Another explosion rocked the building, sending a fresh plume of smoke into the air. The officers' resistance visibly wavered as shouts and the sounds of battle echoed from inside. "Let him through," called a new voice. A blue-haired woman in police uniform approached rapidly. Her expression stern but desperate. "I'm Officer Jenny. My team is pinned down inside. If you can help, we need it now." Naruto nodded, crouching to address Gibble. "Ready for a real battle, partner." The small dragon puffed its chest and growled affirmatively, its golden scales gleaming with anticipation. "Stay behind the response team," Officer Jenny instructed as she led them toward the cafe entrance. "We have officers inside attempting to secure the vault, but they're outmatched." As they entered the smoke-filled cafe, the elegant interior lay in ruins. Tables overturned, decorative fixtures shattered, and scorch marks marred the walls where battles had occurred. A massive hole in the floor revealed stairs descending to lower levels, from which the sounds of ongoing conflict echoed. Officer Jenny pointed toward the opening. "The vault is 3 levels down. My officers engaged the intruders on the second basement level but were forced to retreat. The attackers Avenue at least 3 modified Pokémon unlike anything we've encountered." Naruto assessed the situation quickly. "I need to see what we're dealing with first." He formed a familiar hand sign, concentrating his chakra. Shadow Clone Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, 3 perfect duplicates of Naruto appeared beside him, causing Officer Jenny to stumble back in shock and Sycamore to exclaim in scientific amazement. "Scout the area," Naruto instructed his clones. "Full assessment, but don't engage unless necessary." The clones nodded in unison before leaping down the opening with inhuman agility, disappearing into the smoke below. "How did you?" Jenny began, but Naruto cut her off. "Abilities from my world. I'll explain later if we survive." He turned to Sycamore. "Stay here with the officers. If Kabuto himself is down there, it's too dangerous for anyone without combat training." Sycamore looked ready to protest but nodded reluctantly. "Be careful. The vault contains dangerous knowledge." Naruto felt the mental connection as his first clone encountered the enemy. Images flooded his mind. Humanoid creatures with scaled skin and elongated limbs, moving with unnatural speed through the basement corridors. They weren't fully human, but neither were they Pokémon, exactly the kind of abomination Kabuto would create by combining DNA. 3 hybrid creatures, Naruto reported. They've reached the outer vault door and are working on the inner seal. No sign of Kabuto himself. "Those aren't Pokémon," Jenny said, horror evident in her voice as Naruto described what his clone had seen. "No," he agreed grimly. "There's something worse. Gibble, stay close to me." With that, Naruto leapt down into the opening, landing with practiced ease on the staircase below. Gibble followed, sliding down the debris with surprising grace for such a stocky creature. The first basement level had once been a stylish lounge, now reduced to rubble. Following the path of destruction, Naruto descended further, encountering the remains of security barriers that had been sliced clean through by something unnaturally sharp. On the second basement level, he found 2 police officers taking cover behind an overturned metal desk. Their Pokémon, an Arcanine and a Manectric, standing guard despite obvious injuries. "More reinforcements?" one officer asked hopefully before registering Naruto's appearance. "Wait, you're not police." "I'm here to help," Naruto replied, crouching beside them. "What happened?" "Those things," the officer said, voice shaking. "They look almost human but move like no Pokémon I've ever seen. Our attacks barely affected them. They're after something in the secured vault." A mental alert from his second clone interrupted the conversation. The hybrids had breached the final door. "Stay here," Naruto instructed. "I'm going after them." Without waiting for a response, he continued downward, Gibble racing alongside him. The lowest level opened into a circular chamber dominated by a massive vault door, now hanging from twisted hinges. Beyond it, a corridor led to a smaller room filled with storage units and computer terminals. 3 hybrid creatures were systematically ransacking the room, their movements precise and coordinated. Up close, their appearance was even more disturbing than the clone's vision had conveyed. They possessed primarily human forms but with reptilian skin patterns, elongated fingers ending in claws, and vertical slit pupils in unnaturally colored eyes. Each had distinctive characteristics suggesting different Pokémon DNA, one with Seviper-like patterns, another with Haxorus-like tusks protruding from its jawline, and the third with the distinctive head crest of a Salamence. The Salamence hybrid noticed Naruto first, hissing a warning to its companions. All three abandoned their search to face the intruder, moving with fluid, predatory grace. "Find what master requires SSS," the Seviper hybrid instructed in a chilling, sibilant voice that shouldn't have been possible from a human throat. "I will handle the intruder." The creature lunged with astonishing speed, its clawed hand elongating mid-strike like a serpent's jaw unhinging. Naruto sidestepped, years of shinobi training making the movement instinctual despite the alien nature of his opponent. "Gibble, Dragon Rage," he commanded, recalling the battle techniques Professor Juniper had taught him. The small dragon inhaled deeply before expelling a concentrated beam of blue-purple energy that struck the hybrid squarely in the chest, forcing it backward. The Reacher hissed in pain but recovered quickly, its wounds visibly healing as Naruto watched. "Regenerative abilities," Naruto noted grimly. "Definitely Kabuto's work, he needed to end this quickly. Before the other hybrids escaped with whatever data they sought. Forming hand signs, Naruto gathered his chakra. Wind style. Gale Palm. A compressed burst of wind chakra slammed into the Seviper hybrid, throwing it against the far wall with bone-crushing force. Yet even this wasn't enough to stop it. The creature peeled itself from the indentation in the wall, bones audibly snapping back into place. "You possess unusual abilities," it hissed, eyes narrowing. "Master will be pleased to study you. Tell your master Naruto Uzumaki says hello," Naruto replied, entering sage mode in a swift gathering of natural energy. The hybrid's eyes widened in recognition. "The Jinchuriki. Master predicted your arrival, but not so soon." Its mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. "This changes parameters." The other two hybrids abandoned their search, moving to flank their companion. Whatever they had been looking for would have to wait. Naruto's presence clearly represented a greater priority. "Sage mode," the Haxorus hybrid observed. "Master will reward us greatly for capturing this specimen." 3-against-1 presented poor odds, even for Naruto. While he could handle himself, protecting Gibble complicated matters. The small dragon, however, seemed undaunted, positioning itself defensively before Naruto and growling with surprising ferocity. The three hybrids attacked simultaneously, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of hive mind programming, another of Kabuto's specialties. Naruto created more shadow clones to even the odds, while Gibble launched another dragon rage at the approaching enemies. What followed was unlike any battle Naruto had experienced. The hybrids combined human intelligence with Pokémon abilities in unpredictable ways. The Seviper hybrid spat corrosive venom that dissolved Naruto's clones on contact. The Haxorus hybrid's tusks sliced through solid concrete when Naruto dodged its charge. The Salamence hybrid actually took to the air, using wind-gs that extended from its back to gain aerial advantage. Naruto adapted quickly, using substitution jutsu to avoid lethal strikes while his clones worked to separate the coordinated attackers. Gibble proved remarkably intuitive, following Naruto's commands with precision while adding improvised attacks when opportunities arose. The tide turned when Naruto managed to land a Rasengan on the Haxorus hybrid. The spiraling sphere of chakra drilling through its enhanced defenses and sending it crashing through several storage units. The damage appeared significant enough to disrupt whatever healing factor Kabuto had engineered into the creatures. Seeing their companion disabled, the remaining hybrids shifted tactics. "Retreat protocol initiated," the Salamence hybrid announced in an emotionless tone. "Primary objective compromised. Secondary objective achieved." It withdrew a small device from within its scaled body, a data storage unit blinking with active lights. They had found what they came for. "You're not leaving with that," Naruto declared, gathering chakra for another attack. The Seviper hybrid laughed, a disturbing sound like scales scraping against stone. "We already have. This encounter has been informative." Quote, before Naruto could stop them, both functioning hybrids bit down on capsules hidden in their mouths. Their bodies immediately began dissolving into purple mist. Some kind of failsafe destruction mechanism activated to prevent capture. "No." Naruto lunged forward, but his hands passed through rapidly disintegrating tissue. Master sends regards, the Seviper hybrid rasped as its face dissolved. The reunion approaches, Dragon Sage. Within seconds, nothing remained of the two hybrids except puddles of purplish residue. The third, damaged by Naruto's Rasengan, twitched on the ground. Its self-destruct mechanism apparently malfunctioning. Gible approached the fallen hybrid cautiously, growling low in its throat. The creature's eyes fixed on the SM. All dragon with hatred before it finally managed to activate its failsafe, body dissolving like its companions. Damn it, Naruto muttered, surveying the destruction. Whatever the hybrids had stolen, it was now in Kabuto's possession. Footsteps announced the arrival of Officer Jenny and Professor Sycamore, accompanied by several police officers with Pokémon at the ready. They're gone, Naruto informed them, allowing his Sage mode to fade. Self-destructed before we could capture them. But they took something. Sycamore hurried to the damaged storage units, examining the electronic logs. Quote, they accessed the files on theoretical Mega Evolution applications, he reported grimly. Including research on artificially inducing Mega Evolution without a trainer bond. Is that possible? Officer Jenny asked. Theoretically. Team Flare was researching it before Lysandre's defeat. Sycamore's expression darkened. In the wrong hands, it could allow someone to create an army of Mega Evolved Pokémon with no need for keystones or the emotional bond that normally regulates the transformation. The implications were chilling. If Kabuto combined such technology with his genetic manipulation techniques, he could create weapons unlike anything this world had seen. Those creatures, Jenny said, examining the residue left behind. They spoke. They were intelligent. What were they? Hybrids, Naruto explained. Created by someone from my world who specializes in genetic manipulation. He's combining human and Pokémon DNA, creating servants that have advantages of both. That's horrific, Sycamore whispered. It violates every ethical principle of Pokémon research. Ethics isn't Kabuto's strong suit, Naruto replied grimly. And now he has data on forced Mega Evolution. As they processed this disturbing development, Gible suddenly perked up, its attention fixed on a point behind Naruto. Turning, he discovered they weren't alone. A woman stood in the damaged vault doorway, her presence commanding immediate attention despite her relaxed posture. Tall and elegant, with long blonde hair that fell past her shoulders, she wore a black coat over an outfit that suggested both practicality and refined taste. Most striking were her eyes, gray and penetrating, currently fixed on Naruto with unmistakable interest. When Officer Jenny reported unusual fighting techniques and multiplying trainers, I assumed it was the stress of battle causing hallucinations, she said, her voice rich and confident. I see the reports were quite literal. Sycamore's demeanor shifted to one of deference. Champion Cynthia, I didn't know you were in Kalos. A previously scheduled visit to discuss cross-regional security, she replied, her gaze never leaving Naruto. Fortuitous timing, it seems. She stepped forward, extending her hand. I'm Cynthia, champion of the Sinnoh region. Naruto accepted the handshake, immediately noting the strength in her grip. Naruto Uzumaki, the Dragon Sage, yes. News travels fast in Pokémon League circles. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Though the reports failed to mention your unusual abilities. Before Naruto could respond, another figure appeared behind Cynthia, a woman whose presence exuded a different but equally commanding aura. Where Cynthia projected strength and analytical sharpness, this newcomer radiated artistic grace and intuitive power. Her short dark hair framed delicate features, while her flowing white outfit suggested theatrical influences. Always making dramatic entrances, Cynthia. The woman asked with good-natured exasperation. Some things never change, even across regions. Diantha, Cynthia acknowledged with a nod. I was about to send for you. It seems the security concerns W.E. discussed this morning have materialized rather spectacularly. Diantha's gaze fell on Naruto, her expression shifting to one of immediate recognition, not of his face, but of something deeper. You're the one, she said softly. The simple statement carrying weight beyond its words. Sycamore stepped forward. Naruto, may I present Diantha, Kalos Pokémon League champion and renowned actress. Diantha, this is Naruto Uzumaki. Visiting from, well, that's complicated. From another world entirely, Diantha finished, surprising everyone present. I've seen you in my dreams. The directness of her statement created a momentary silence. Cynthia raised an eyebrow, while Sycamore looked between them with renewed scientific curiosity. Your dreams? Naruto asked carefully. Diantha nodded, unembarrassed by the admission. 3 nights ago, a figure with markings like yours, standing between black and white dragons. I dismissed it as creative imagination until reports came from Unova ABO. Someone calming a rampaging Hydreigon using unknown abilities. Gibble, who had been examining the newcomers from behind Naruto's legs, chose this moment to approach Diantha with uncharacteristic gentleness. The small dragon sniffed her hand before pressing its head against her palm in a gesture of approval. Your partner has excellent instincts, Diantha observed, carefully scratching Gibble's fin. Though I sense he's quite selective about whom he trusts. We should continue this conversation somewhere more secure, Cynthia suggested, gesturing to the destroyed vault. Whatever was stolen presents a clear regional threat, possibly global if your assessment of these hybrids is accurate. My private residence would be suitable, Diantha offered. It has appropriate security and is removed from public attention. Officer Jenny, who had been coordinating evidence collection, approached their group. Champion Diantha, Champion Cynthia, I'll need official statements about this incident for international police records. Of course, Diantha agreed. However, given the sensitive nature of what's occurred, I suggest classifying this investigation at the highest level. Restricted to champions and essential research personnel only. Jenny hesitated but nodded. I'll need authorization from. It's already done, Cynthia interrupted, producing an electronic badge bearing international police insignia. Special dispensation from the Pokémon League Security Council. This incident falls under Protocol 17. The officer's eyes widened at whatever this meant. Understood, Champion. I'll adjust our response accordingly. As Jenny departed to implement these new directives, Naruto glanced at Sycamore, who looked equally impressed by the champion's authority. Protocol L-17 is invoked only for threats with potential multi-regional impact, the professor explained quietly. It's been used perhaps 3 times in the last century. The situation warrants it, Cynthia stated, overhearing his comment. Creatures that combine human and Pokémon characteristics, capable of speech and coordinated tactics, stealing research on forced mega evolution. She shook her head grimly. This extends beyond standard league jurisdiction. My car is waiting upstairs, Diantha said. Professor, will you join us? Your expertise on mega evolution will be invaluable. Of course, Sycamore agreed. Sophie can oversee the lab in my absence. As they prepared to leave the destroyed vault, Naruto felt a strange resonance, similar to what he'd experienced at Dragonspiral Tower but more focused. The sensation appeared to affect Gibble as well. The small dragon's fin quivered as if detecting subtle vibrations. Do you feel that? He asked the group. Diantha paused, HEA.D tilting slightly as if listening to something beyond normal hearing. Yes, a resonance. Her eyes met Naruto's with sudden understanding. Your presence is activating something. Cynthia closed her eyes briefly, her expression sharpening with concentration. There's definitely an energy pattern forming, similar to what occurs near meteorite sites in Sinnoh. Following the sensation, Naruto approached a section of wall that appeared unremarkable. As he neared, the feeling intensified. Without thinking, he pressed his palm against the surface, channeling a small amount of sage chakra. The wall responded immediately. Ancient glyphs, similar to those at Dragonspiral Tower but distinctly Colossian in style, illuminated beneath his touch, forming a spiraling pattern that centered on his hand. Impossible, Sycamore whispered. This section of the building predates Team Flare. These markings have never been documented. The glyphs pulsed once before a section of wall receded, revealing a small cavity containing a single object, a crystalline stone that resembled a keystone but larger, with orange and blue swirls suspended in its depths. That's not a standard mega stone, Cynthia observed, her analytical mind clearly cataloging the differences. Diantha stepped closer, her expression reverent. It's a dragon heart stone. I thought they existed only in legends. Dragon heart stone, Naruto repeated, the name resonating with something Zinnia had mentioned. According to ancient Colossian texts, Diantha explained, they were created when the original dragon's essence scattered across regions. Most were believed destroyed during the Great War 3,000 years ago. The stone pulsed with light as Naruto's hand hovered near it, responding to his presence like a living thing seeking connection. "It's meant for you," Diantha said with absolute certainty. After a moment's hesitation, Naruto carefully retrieved the stone. The moment his fingers closed around it, a surge of energy coursed through him. Not painful but intensely powerful, like activating Sage Mode but channeled specifically toward his connection with dragon energy. Gibble reacted immediately, its body glowing with the same orange-blue light that emanated from the stone. The small dragon grew momentarily translucent, its form shifting to reveal glimpses of its future evolutions, Gabite and Garchomp, before settling back to normal. An evolutionary resonance, Sycamore breathed, recording the phenomenon with scientific awe. The stone is showing potential futures. As the glow subsided, Naruto felt fundamentally changed, not physically, but in his connection to this world's energy. Something had aligned within him, strengthening his ability to interact with the natural forces that governed Pokémon, particularly dragons. "We need to understand what just happened," Cynthia stated, her analytical nature asserting itself. "And how it connects to these hybrid creatures and their stolen data. And to the prophecy," Diantha added, her gaze lingering on Naruto with an intensity that suggested she was seeing beyond his physical presence to something deeper. The dragon sage's appearance was foretold to coincide with both great danger and great awakening. Outside the destroyed cafe, media had gathered behind police barriers, their cameras capturing the champion's emergence with Naruto and Sycamore. Flashbulbs popped as reporters called questions about the attack and the mysterious trainer accompanying Kalos and Sinnoh's champions. Diantha navigated the press with practiced ease, offering no comment beyond assurances that the situation was under control. Her sleek limousine waited at the curb, its driver holding the door as the group approached. From an apartment window overlooking the scene, a solitary figure observed their departure through high-powered binoculars. Unlike Kabuto's hybrid creations, this observer appeared fully human, a woman with magenta hair styled in a distinctive angular cut. Wearing the remains of what had once been a Team Flare uniform, now modified to avoid recognition. Malva, former Elite Four member and Team Flare executive, lowered her binoculars as the limousine disappeared into Lumios's traffic. Her expression remained unreadable as she activated a secure communication device. "The Dragon Sage has found the Heart Stone," she reported to the recipient. Sooner than anticipated, the hybrids succeeded in acquiring the Mega Evolution data but failed to retrieve the stone. A pause as she listened to the response. "Yes, both champions are involved now. Protocol 17 has been invoked." Another pause. "Understood. I'll maintain surveillance and await further instructions." She ended the communication, returning her attention to the police activity below. Whatever allegiance she now held remained unclear, her motives as enigmatic as her composed expression. The seeds of conflict had been planted. Ancient prophecy, modern science, and forces from another dimension converged around Naruto Uzumaki, the unlikely dragon sage thrust into a world on the brink of transformation. As Diantha's limousine carried them toward her private residence, the scattered pieces of destiny began aligning into a pattern none of them yet fully comprehended. In his palm, the Dragon Heart Stone pulsed with quiet power, a constant reminder that Hi's journey in this world had only just begun. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, Champion's Curiosity. Diantha's private estate nestled in the forested hills outside Lumio's city, combining Colossian architectural elegance with strategic seclusion. Ancient stone walls surrounded meticulously landscaped grounds where Pokémon moved freely between sculptured gardens and natural woodland. The main residence, harmonious blend of traditional chateau design and modern amenities, offered commanding views of both city and countryside from its elevated position. As their limousine passed through wrought iron gates bearing stylized dragon motifs, Naruto observed security measures that would impress even Konoha's Anbu: discrete camera systems, patrolling guard Pokémon, and what appeared to be energy barrier narrators disguised as decorative lamp posts. "Your home is beautiful," he commented as they followed a winding driveway between flowering trees. "A sanctuary more than a home," Diantha replied with a slight smile. "Being champion comes with public responsibilities that occasionally necessitate private retreats." Strategic location, Cynthia noted, her analytical gaze assessing the surroundings. Defensible high ground with multiple evacuation routes. You've enhanced security since my last visit. Recent events suggested prudence, Diantha answered simply. The limousine stopped before BR.OAD marble steps leading to the main entrance, where a Gardevoir waited, the psychic Pokemon's graceful form instantly recognizable from Naruto's crash course in Pokemon species. Unlike most of its kind, Diantha's Gardevoir wore a distinctive pendant containing what Naruto now recognized as a Mega Stone. My oldest friend and partner, Diantha explained as they exited the vehicle. Gardevoir senses energetic disturbances before any technological system can detect them. The Pokemon approached, its movements fluid and precise. Rather than greeting its trainer first, Gardevoir stopped directly before Naruto. Red eyes studying him with unmistakable intelligence. After a moment's consideration, it extended a slender hand toward him in a distinctly human gesture. That's unusual, Cynthia remarked. Gardevoir is typically reserved with strangers. Naruto accepted the offered hand, experiencing an immediate psychic connection, gentle but probing, like a polite question formed in pure emotion rather than words. She's curious about you, Diantha translated, watching their interaction with interest. About your energy signature. Different from this world, Naruto acknowledged, directing the thought toward Gardevoir, who tilted its head slightly in confirmation before releasing his hand. Inside, the chateau's grandeur revealed itself through soaring ceilings, art-adorned walls, and furnishings that balanced luxury with functionality. Diantha led them to a circular study whose panoramic windows overlooked Lumio's city in the distance. The room's centerpiece, a round table craft, from ancient wood, bore intricate carvings similar to those Naruto had seen in Dragon Spiral Tower. This table comes from the original Master Tower, Diantha explained, noting his interest. Dating back approximately 3,000 years to King Az's reign. It's said to have been used for councils between dragon keepers from across the early regions. Sycamore whistled appreciatively. Museum quality historical artifact repurposed as furniture. Only you, Diantha. She smiled unapologetically. History should serve the present, not just be preserved behind glass. Please, everyone sit. As they settled around the ancient table, Gibble explored the room with typical curiosity, eventually discovering a cushioned alcove seemingly designed specifically for Pokemon visitors. The small dragon circled 3 times before settling contentedly, though its eyes remained alert, following the conversation. First, Cynthia began without preamble, let's establish what we know. Her commanding presence utterly directed the discussion despite being in Diantha's home. Hybrid creatures with combined human-Pokemon characteristics attacked a secure facility to steal research on forced mega evolution. These hybrids were created by someone named Kabuto Yakushi, who originated from the same world as Naruto. Naruto nodded confirmation. Kabuto was a skilled medical ninja who specialized in genetic experimentation and reanimation techniques. During our last war, he modified his own body to incorporate abilities from many different individuals. Adapting such techniques to Pokemon genetics would require extraordinary knowledge. Sycamore observed. How could he have acquired such understanding so quickly? Kabuto's greatest skill was always information gathering, Naruto explained. He raided every major village in our world without detection. Here, he'd likely do the same, working in research facilities, stealing data, gathering biological samples before anyone realized what was happening. The timing suggests he arrived before you, Cynthia noted. Professor Rowan in Sinnoh reported unusual energy readings approximately 8 months ago near Sendoff Spring, a location known for dimensional instabilities. That matches my vision at Dragon Spiral Tower, Naruto confirmed. I saw Kabuto creating some kind of dimensional tear using techniques that reminded me of Kagaya's abilities. Diantha, who had been quiet during this exchange, finally spoke. And then you appeared at Celestial Tower several weeks ago, drawn through a similar dimensional passage. Her perceptive gaze studied Naruto. Not by coincidence, I think. The prophecy, Sycamore agreed. The dragon sage arriving when the scattered dragons face a common threat. Cynthia's expression remained skeptical. I prefer empirical evidence to ancient predictions. The immediate concern is what Kabuto intends to do with the stolen Mega Evolution research. Create an army, Naruto said grimly. In our world, He resurrected and controlled thousands of deceased shinobi during the war. Here, with Pokémon genetics and forced mega evolution, he could develop something even more dangerous. To what end? Diantha asked. Conquest. Power. Naruto considered the question. Kabuto never seemed interested in ruling anything. His motivations were always more experimental. Pushing boundaries, proving his brilliance, surpassing natural limitations. A scientist gone rogue, Sycamore suggested. That aligns with the methodical nature of the vault breach. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Cynthia absently touched a Pokeball at her belt, a habit Naruto had noticed when she was processing complex information. The Dragon Heart Stone complicates matters. That such an artifact would reveal itself to you now, after centuries of remaining hidden, suggests forces at work beyond Kabuto's schemes. I've been researching Dragon Heart Stones since our discovery in the vault, Sycamore interjected. According to Colossian legends, they were created during the original Dragon's division, crystallized fragments of pure dragon essence that scattered across regions. Most were believed destroyed during the weapon deployment 3,000 years ago. What did they do exactly? Naruto asked, feeling the stone's weight in his pocket. Since claiming it, he'd noticed subtle changes in his perception, energy patterns becoming more visible. Particularly around dragon-type Pokémon. The legends are frustratingly vague, Sycamore admitted. Some texts suggest they enhance communication between humans and dragon Pokémon. Others imply they can temporarily unify separated dragon energies, perhaps even initiate transformations beyond mega evolution. There's one way to find out, Cynthia stated decisively, rising from her seat. A practical demonstration. Her eyes locked with Naruto's. Battle me. The directness of her challenge momentarily surprised everyone at the table. Battle, Naruto repeated, glancing at Gibble who had perked up at the word. My partner's still young and inexperienced. A small, confident smile played at the corners of Cynthia's mouth. I wasn't suggesting a full 6-on-1 champion match. Just a single Pokémon each. Your Gibble against my Gibble's final evolution. She removed a Pokeball from her belt. I want to see this Dragon Sage connection firsthand. Is this really the time? Sycamore asked, though his scientific curiosity clearly approved of the experiment. Actually, it's perfect timing, Diantha responded, understanding Cynthia's intention immediately. If the Dragon Heart Stone enhances Naruto's connection with Dragon Pokémon, a controlled battle environment is ideal for testing its capabilities. Naruto considered the challenge. He'd spent past weeks learning Pokémon battle basics but hadn't faced anyone of Cynthia's caliber. Yet the prospect of testing his abilities, of pushing boundaries to understand this new power, resonated with his natural competitive spirit. All right, he agreed, turning to his partner. What do you say, Gibble? Ready to face your evolved form? The small dragon jumped to its feet with an enthusiastic growl, golden scales gleaming as it puffed its chest in acceptance of the challenge. The garden terrace has a regulation battle area, Diantha offered, already moving toward glass doors leading outside. Gardevoir can referee. Minutes later, they stood on opposite ends of a beautifully maintained battlefield that blended seamlessly with the surrounding gardens. Flowering vines framed the regulation. Markings while strategically placed boulders and small water features provided varied terrain. Sycamore observed from a stone bench at the sideline, monitoring instruments he'd quickly assembled to record energy readings during the encounter. Standard exhibition rules, Diantha announced as Gardevoir took position at center field. Single Pokémon. Battle concludes at either trainer's concession or Pokémon's inability to continue. No time limit. She glanced between the opponents. Are both trainers ready? Cynthia nodded, her expression shifting to the focused intensity that had made her legendary across regions. All casual conversation disappeared, replaced by the calculating presence of a master strategist. Naruto matched her seriousness, centering himself as he would before any important contest. Ready. Begin. Diantha called, stepping back as Gardevoir raised its arms to signal the match's start. With practiced grace, Cynthia tossed her Pokeball skyward. Garchomp, Battle Dance. In a flash of light, her signature Pokémon materialized, a towering dragon with midnight blue scales, crimson chest plating, and scythe-like appendages extending from its arms. The ground trembled slightly as Garchomp landed. its yellow eyes fixing immediately on the much smaller Gible across the field. The size difference was staggering. Garchomp stood nearly twice Naruto's height, while Gible barely reached his knee. Yet the small dragon showed no fear, stepping forward with determination. "Your move first," Cynthia offered with professional courtesy. Naruto assessed the situation quickly. Direct attacks against Garchomp's superior strength and speed would prove futile. He needed strategy, not power. "Gible, sand attack," followed by dig. He commanded. The golden dragon immediately scraped its feet across the ground, kicking up a cloud of sand toward Garchomp's eyes before diving underground with surprising speed. Cynthia smiled appreciatively at the tactical approach. Defensive opening. Garchomp. Earthquake. The massive dragon raised 1 foot before stomping the ground with tremendous force. The entire battlefield rippled with seismic energy, disrupting Gible's underground trajectory and forcing it to surface prematurely, tumbling across the field. Dragon Rush. Cynthia followed up immediately. Garchomp's body became enveloped in blue draconic energy as it launched forward with astonishing speed, leaving trenches in the ground where its feet pushed off. "Dodge," Naruto called, but the command came too late. Garchomp's attack connected solidly, sending Gible flying backward to land heavily near Naruto's feet. For a moment, it seemed the battle might end before truly beginning. Then, with remarkable tenacity, Gible pushed itself upright, shaking off the impact and growling defiantly at its evolved counterpart. "Impressive spirit," Cynthia acknowledged. But spirit alone won't overcome this evolution gap. She was right, Naruto realized. Conventional tactics wouldn't work here. He needed something unconventional, something that utilized the unique connection he shared with his partner. Almost instinctively, his hand moved to the dragon heart stone in his pocket. The moment his fingers contacted the crystal, he felt a surge of energy, similar to entering sage mode but more focused, specifically attuned to draconic essence. "Let's try something different," he said quietly to Gible, who looked back with absolute trust despite the difficult situation. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, drawing in natural energy while channeling it through the heart stone rather than directly into himself. Orange markings appeared around his eyes, but instead of stopping there, the energy flowed outward toward Gible. The small dragon's body began glowing with the same orange-blue light that emanated from the stone. "Remarkable," Sycamore murmured from the sideline, his instruments recording the energy transfer. "It's similar to Mega Evolution Energy patterns but fundamentally different in structure." Cynthia watched with intense fascination as Gible's form began changing, not evolving, but temporarily manifesting aspects of its evolutionary potential. Its fin elongated, its stance became more upright, and a golden aura resembling Garchomp's silhouette surrounded its body. "Dragon Sage Resonance," Diantha whispered, giving name to the phenomenon unfolding before them. Naruto felt his consciousness partially merge with Gible's, not controlling the Pokémon, but sharing perception and intention in a partnership that transcended normal trainer-Pokémon bonds. This wasn't like Mega Evolution's power enhancement, it was a harmonization of energies that amplified inherent potential without forcing transformation. "Ready?" Naruto asked, the question directed to his partner through their shared connection rather than spoken aloud. Gible, now surrounded by its evolutionary aura, nodded, its movements more fluid and confident than before. "Dragon Claw," Naruto commanded. The small dragon launched forward with speed that belied its size, golden energy forming claw-like extensions around its stubby arms. The attack struck Garchomp before Cynthia could call a counter, the much larger dragon sliding backward from the impact's unexpected force. "Fascinating," Cynthia commented, genuinely impressed. "Garchomp, Dragon Rush again." The champion's partner roared before charging, draconic energy forming around its body once more. This time, however, Naruto and Gible moved in perfect synchronization, the shared awareness allowing for millisecond perfect timing. "Sidestep and dig," Naruto called. Gible pivoted with graceful precision that should have been impossible for its stocky body, avoiding Garchomp's rush by mere inches before disappearing underground again. Unlike the previous attempt, this dive happened with such speed that Garchomp couldn't immediately track the movement. "Earthquake won't work if you can't target," Naruto said, feeling Gible's position through their connection. Now, the golden dragon erupted from the ground directly beneath Garchomp, landing a powerful strike that disrupted the larger Pokemon's balance. Before Cynthia could counter, Naruto pressed the advantage. Dragon Rage, continuous spiral pattern. Understanding his intention through their resonance, Gible executed a maneuver that would have been impossible under normal circumstances, launching multiple Dragon Rage attacks while moving in a circular pattern around Garchomp, creating a vortex of draconic energy that constricted around the larger dragon. Cynthia's eyes widened at the unconventional tactic. Breakthrough with Draco Meteor. Garchomp roared, channeling massive energy upward. The sky above the battlefield darkened momentarily before glowing orange meteors began raining down, Garchomp's ultimate attack designed to blanket the entire field. Rather than attempt evasion, Naruto drew deeper on the Dragon Heart Stone's power. Extending his hand toward the descending meteors. Dragon Pulse, intercept pattern. He called, somehow knowing Gible could perform the move despite not having naturally learned it yet. The golden dragon inhaled deeply before firing a concentrated beam of purple-blue energy upward. As the beam contacted the first meteor, it split into multiple streams that intercepted each descending projectile, creating spectacular mid-air explosions that showered the battlefield with harmless sparks. Sycamore had abandoned his instruments to watch open-mouthed, while Diantha observed with a knowing smile, as if witnessing the confirmation of something she'd always suspected. When the light show subsided, both dragons stood facing each other across the battlefield, Garchomp showing signs of genuine exertion. Gible still surrounded by its evolutionary aura but clearly reaching the limits of its endurance. Enough, Cynthia called unexpectedly, raising a hand to signal conclusion. I've seen what I needed to see. As both trainers approached center field, the golden aura surrounding Gible gradually faded, leaving the small dragon looking simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated by the experience. Naruto's sage markings similarly receded as he released the connection through the Heart Stone. That was no ordinary trainer-Pokemon battle, Cynthia stated, her analytical mind already processing the implications. The resonance you established goes beyond any documented bonding technique, including Mega Evolution. It felt natural, Naruto admitted, crouching to check on Gible, who bumped his head affectionately against Naruto's hand despite its fatigue. Like we were sharing perspective rather than me directing actions. Sycamore hurried over, reviewing readings from his instruments with scientific excitement. The energy signatures were extraordinary. Not quite Mega Evolution, not quite Z-Move energy, something altogether unique. The Dragon Heart Stone acts as a conduit for your natural energy, creating a harmonic resonance with Gible's draconic essence. More importantly, Diantha added, it temporarily manifested aspects of Gible's evolutionary potential without forcing actual evolution. That shouldn't be possible. Garchomp approached, examining the much smaller dragon with newfound respect before offering a claw in what resembled a formal gesture of acknowledgement. Gible straightened proudly, placing its stubby arm against Garchomp's much larger appendage in acceptance of the recognition. My Garchomp doesn't offer respect easily, Cynthia noted with a hint of pride. You've earned it. She turned to Naruto directly. And you've convinced me there's substance behind these dragon sage legends. Your abilities are unlike anything in our documented history. Coming from the woman known across regions for her historical knowledge and analytical skepticism, this represented significant acknowledgement. The question remains, Sycamore said as they returned inside, how these abilities connect to the prophecy and to Kabuto's activities. Is he aware of the Dragon Heart Stones? Could he be seeking them for his hybrid experiments? We need more information, Cynthia decided. Historical context beyond what's available in conventional research. Diantha nodded in agreement. I know just where to find it. There's a secluded villa, GE in eastern Kalos where dragon lore has been preserved through oral tradition for centuries. Elder Drake resides there, the oldest living authority on ancient dragon histories. Drake. Cynthia's interest visibly sharpened. The former Hoenn Elite Four member. I thought he'd retired to isolation years ago. He did, Diantha confirmed. After stepping down from official duties, he established a sanctuary for dragon trainers seeking traditional knowledge. Few know his location, but as Kalos champion, I've maintained contact. When can we leave? Naruto asked, feeling increasing urgency. Whatever Kabuto planned with the stolen Mega Evolution data, delay would only work in his favor. Tomorrow morning, Diantha replied. The village is remote, accessible only by flying Pokémon or several days' journey overland. I've arranged transportation. She glanced at Cynthia, assuming the Sinnoh champion can delay her other obligations. Cynthia's expression conveyed both determination and calculation. The Sinnoh League is stable under Lucian's temporary leadership. This matter takes precedence over ceremonial duties. Her gaze met Naruto's directly. Besides, I have questions only ancient dragon lore might answer. That evening, after Sycamore departed to coordinate additional research at his laboratory, Naruto found himself on a stone balcony overlooking Diantha's moonlit gardens. The events of the day, the battle with Cynthia, the Dragon Heart Stone's power, the growing certainty that his presence in this world served some greater purpose, left him contemplative. Gibble slept peacefully nearby, curled on a cushioned bench after enjoying a hearty meal to recover its strength. The small dragon had proven itself remarkably resilient and adaptable, qualities Naruto deeply appreciated in a partner. "Your thoughts are loud enough to hear from across the garden," came Cynthia's voice as she approached from the doorway, 2 steaming cups in hand. "Tea, a Sinahan blend said to promote clarity of mind." Naruto accepted the offered cup with thanks, appreciating the earthy aroma that reminded him somewhat of brews Sakura had prepared during long missions. Cynthia leaned against the balustrade beside him. Her usual commanding presence softened somewhat in the moonlight. Without her formal black coat, in simple dark clothing, she seemed more approachable though no less impressive. "In my experience," she began after a comfortable silence, "being at the center of prophecies is rarely as glamorous as legends suggest." Naruto laughed softly. "That's putting it mildly. In my world, I was part of a prophecy that ultimately led to a war that nearly destroyed everything." "Yet you fulfilled it," she observed. "Successfully, given you survived to be transported here. At tremendous cost," he countered. Memories of fallen friends momentarily clouding his expression. Prophecies have a way of coming true while still subverting all expectations. Cynthia nodded, understanding evident in her gray eyes. "That's why I've always approached them with skepticism. Not disbelief, but careful analysis. History shows that prophecies often become self-fulfilling when people act on incomplete interpretations." "Is that why you tested me today?" Naruto asked. "To assess whether I'm truly this dragon sage, or just someone who happens to fit a vague description." She smiled appreciatively at his perception. "Partly. I needed to see your abilities firsthand rather than rely on second-hand accounts. But I was also curious about how you approach power." She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "Many who discover unusual abilities immediately seek to dominate or control. You instead formed a partnership with your Pokémon, sharing power rather than imposing it." "That's just how I was taught," Naruto replied simply. "True strength comes from protecting others, not commanding them. A philosophy that aligns with the healthiest traditions of Pokémon training," she noted. "Though not universally practiced, unfortunately." Their conversation paused as Diantha joined them, having changed from her formal white outfit to a more casual blue ensemble that nonetheless retained her characteristic elegance. Gardevoir accompanied her, the psychic Pokémon's movements mirroring its trainer's graceful bearing. "Discussing prophecies and responsibilities," Diantha asked perceptively, accepting the cup of tea Cynthia had prepared for her. "Heavy topics for an evening after battle." "Just comparing notes on the burden of expectations," Cynthia replied with a slight smile. "Something all three of us understand, I think." Diantha nodded, her expression suggesting deeper understanding than her light tone conveyed. "Public figures carrying private knowledge. Champions, Jinchuriki, or dragon sages, the weight feels similar regardless of title." Naruto looked between the two women, struck by how different yet complementary they seemed. Cynthia embodied analytical strength and historical wisdom, while Diantha projected intuitive grace and artistic perception. Both were clearly extraordinary in their respective domains, their champion status earned through qualities that transcended mere battle prowess. "May I ask something personal?" he ventured, curiosity overcoming reserve. "What made each of you become trainers initially, before championships and public responsibilities?" The question seemed to surprise them both, perhaps because few people looked beyond their current status to their origins. Cynthia recovered first, her expression warming with memory. "My grandmother gave me my first Pokémon, a Gibble, actually." She glanced at the sleeping golden dragon nearby. "I was fascinated by ancient legends and ruins even as a child." Pokémon training began as a way to safely explore archaeological sites, then evolved into a journey of discovery that eventually led to the championship. "So you're a researcher first, champion second?" Naruto asked, finding this alignment of passion and profession interesting. "The roles complement each other," she explained. "Championship status provides resources and access for historical research that would otherwise remain inaccessible. In turn, historical knowledge enhances my understanding of Pokémon beyond contemporary training methods." Diantha's answer, when it came, reflected a different path entirely. "I began as a performer," she said, gazing toward the distant lights of Lumio's city, acting in small productions with Ralts, Gardevoir's first form, as my partner both on and off stage. We developed a connection through shared artistic expression that naturally extended to battle." She smiled fondly at Gardevoir, who returned the affection with a gentle psychic pulse visible as a brief aura around them both. "People assume I became champion despite my acting career," she continued. "The truth is quite the opposite. Each role strengthened the other. Understanding character motivation makes me a better strategist. Battle discipline makes me a more focused performer." Naruto considered their responses, finding unexpected parallels to his own journey. "In my world, I became a shinobi because that was the path to acknowledgement in my village. But along the way, it became about protecting precious people instead of personal recognition. Purpose evolving beyond initial motivation," Cynthia observed. "That's the mark of genuine growth." Their conversation continued as night deepened, ranging from training philosophies to regional differences to the unique challenges of public roles. Despite the serious circumstances that had brought them together, Naruto found himself genuinely enjoying their company, their perspectives both familiar and refreshingly different from those in his world. Later, as he prepared for sleep in the guest chamber Diantha had provided, Naruto felt Gible stir restlessly beside him. The small dragon seemed troubled by dreams, making soft distressed sounds unlike its usual confident demeanor. "What's wrong, buddy?" Naruto asked quietly, placing a gentle hand on his partner's back. Gible settled immediately at his touch, but something else happened simultaneously, a brief, powerful surge of sensation that wasn't quite chakra but similarly familiar. For a fleeting moment, Naruto felt a presence he recognized instantly despite the dimensional distance separating them. Kurama, asterisk. The connection was tenuous, like trying to hear a voice through rushing water, but unmistakable nonetheless. The nine-tailed fox's distinctive chakra signature pulsed once, twice, deliberate rather than accidental, before fading back into dimensional silence. Naruto sat motionless, heart racing. This wasn't imagination or wishful thinking. Kurama had reached across worlds, if only for seconds. Which meant a connection still existed, and if it could be strengthened. "Someone's looking for me," he whispered to Gible, who blinked drowsily at him. They haven't given up. The realization brought both comfort and conflict. His friends were trying to find him, potentially creating a way home. Yet with each passing day in this world, with Kabuto's threat looming, and the Dragon Sage prophecy unfolding around him, Naruto felt increasing responsibility toward this reality as well. He slept fitfully that night, dreams shifting between Konoha's familiar landscape and vast dragon sanctuaries he'd never seen yet somehow recognized. In these dreams, he stood at a crossroads between worlds, each path calling with equal urgency. Morning brought renewed focus as the group prepared for their journey to the Dragon Village. Diantha's garden terrace transformed into a temporary helipad where a sleek aircraft waited, smaller than the commercial plane that had brought Naruto to Kalos but clearly designed for speed and discretion. "Private transportation has its advantages," Cynthia remarked as they boarded. "Though I typically prefer Pokémon transport for the connection to natural rhythms." "The village is nearly 500 miles east," Diantha explained as the pilot, a trusted League security officer, initiated pre-flight procedures. "Even on the fastest flying Pokémon, that's a full day's journey with multiple rest stops." The aircraft lifted off with surprising quietness, banking toward the rising sun as Lumio's city fell away beneath them. Through the window, Naruto watched the landscape transform from urban development to agricultural patchwork to increasingly rugged wilderness. Kalos revealed itself as a region of striking geographical diversity, from coastal lowlands to alpine peaks, dense forests to sprawling plateaus. Eastern Kalos remained largely untouched by modernization, Diantha explained as they soared over particularly remote terrain. Some communities there maintain traditions dating back to pre-technological eras, particularly those with strong connections to dragon lore. Similar to Blackthorn City in Johto and Meteor Falls settlements in Hoenn. Cynthia added, her historian's knowledge evident. Dragon-focused communities historically preferred isolation to preserve their training methods and bloodlines. Bloodlines? Naruto asked, the concept familiar from his own world's clans. Some families claim direct descent from ancient trainers who first formed bonds with dragon Pokémon, Cynthia explained. They maintain genetic registries tracking both human and Pokémon lineages across generations. The village we're visiting, Drakenridge, traces its founding to refugees from the Great War 3,000 years ago, Diantha continued. According to their oral history, their ancestors were dragon keepers who opposed King Az's weapon, fleeing east before its deployment. 3 hours into their flight, the landscape below changed dramatically as they crossed into a region of sheer cliffs and mist-shrouded valleys. Ancient forests covered steep slopes, occasionally parting to reveal glittering lakes or rushing rivers. The pilot descended gradually, following a winding valley between towering ridge lines. We're approaching Drakenridge Valley, Diantha announced. The village itself is built into the sea. Cliffside ahead, those terraces carved directly into living rock. Following her gesture, Naruto spotted what at first appeared to be natural formations in the cliff face, only to realize they were meticulously constructed dwellings and agricultural platforms arranged in semicircular tiers. The structures blended so perfectly with their surroundings that they seemed to grow from the rock itself, an architectural philosophy that prioritized harmony with nature over imposing human presence. No modern landing facilities, the pilot informed them as they circled the settlement. All set down in the trading meadow below the village. Local guides will meet you there. The trading meadow proved to be a natural clearing beside a swift mountain stream, where several simple wooden structures say RVED as marketplaces for surrounding communities. As their aircraft touched down, Naruto noticed people emerging from the tree line, not with alarm but with the casual interest of those accustomed to occasional visitors. Most striking was their escort, a woman perhaps in her early 30s, with vibrant teal hair partially concealed beneath a hooded cloak decorated with dragon scale patterns. What immediately caught Naruto's attention, however, was her energy signature. Like Zinnia, she radiated a distinctive resonance that harmonized with dragon Pokémon, visible to his increasingly sensitive perception as a subtle aura. Champion Diantha, the woman greeted with formal respect as they disembarked. Champion Cynthia, Elder Drake foresaw your arrival. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, lingering on the barely perceptible marks around his eyes that appeared whenever he channeled even trace amounts of natural energy. And the sage from beyond. You are expected. You must be Draconid, Naruto observed, recognizing similarities to Zinnia's distinctive energy pattern. The woman's expression registered brief surprise before settling into cautious assessment. Karina of the Eastern Draconid tribe, she confirmed. One of few remaining keepers of the old ways in Kalos. Thank you for meeting us, Diantha responded diplomatically. We seek Elder Drake's counsel on matters concerning dragon prophecies. Karina nodded, her formal manner softening slightly. He has prepared for your coming since yesterday's moon. This way, please, as they followed her toward a steep path ascending the cliff face. Gibble emerged from its luxury ball without prompting, apparently sensing the significance of their location. The small dragon immediately began sniffing the air, its fin quivering with excitement. Your partner recognizes ancestral grounds, Karina noted, observing Gibble's behavior. Dragon Pokémon retain genetic memory of sacred sites even across generations and regions. The path upward proved more sophisticated than it initially appeared. What looked like a simple mountain trail revealed itself as an ingeniously designed switchback system with subtle defensive features, narrow passages easily blocked, overhangs suitable for lookout positions, and occasional side paths leading to dead ends that would confuse unwelcome visitors. The village has never fallen to outside forces, Karina explained as they climbed. Not during the ancient war, not during the regional conflicts that followed. Dragon Pokémon and their human partners maintain a defense bond that transcends conventional military approaches. As they ascended, Naruto began noticing dragon-type Pokémon integrated throughout the natural environment, Dratini swimming in carefully maintained pools beside the path, Bagon sunning themselves on rock outcroppings, Noibat clustering in small caves. Unlike captive Pokémon or even those in sanctuaries, these dragons moved with complete freedom, acknowledging human presence but not subordinate to it. The relationship here is different, he observed aloud. Karina glanced back approvingly. Yes, we do not consider ourselves trainers or owners. We are partners in mutual territory, guardians together rather than master and servant. A philosophy increasingly rare in modern regions, Cynthia noted. Even Blackthorn City has adopted conventional training methods in recent generations. To our detriment, perhaps, Karina responded with a hint of sadness. Each year, fewer young people maintain the old bonds. They leave for cities, for gym challenges, for modern careers. The path finally opened onto the lowest tier of the village proper, a broad, curved terrace supporting gardens, gathering spaces, and modest dwellings. Residents paused in their activities to observe the newcomers, their expressions ranging from curiosity to reverence when their gaze fell on Naruto. Children pointed at Gibble's unusual coloration, whispering excitedly to each other. Word of the Dragon Sage's appearance has reached even our isolated community, Karina explained as they proceeded upward through the village levels. Some dismissed it as exaggeration. Others recognized fulfillment of ancient promises. Quote, each successive tier revealed different aspects of village life, training grounds where youngsters practiced alongside dragon partners, workshops crafting traditional implements, meditation platforms where elders sat in apparent communion with larger dragons. The entire community existed in a state of harmonious function that reminded Naruto somewhat of Konoha's organized chaos, though with greater emphasis on spiritual practice. The highest tier, smallest but most elaborate in its construction, contained a single structure built directly into the living rock of the cliff face. Its entrance, framed by massive dragon bones fossilized into the stone itself, bore inscriptions in the same ancient script Naruto had seen in Dragonspiral Tower. The Hall of Elders, Karina announced. Stopping before the entrance, only those with dragon blood or dragon blessing may proceed uninvited. She placed her palm against a central glyph, which illuminated briefly in acknowledgement. I speak for these visitors. They come seeking wisdom in time of awakening. The inscriptions glowed in sequence, spiraling outward from her hand in patterns that formed a complete circle before fading. The massive stone door, seemingly immovable given its size, slid silently inward, revealing a chamber bathed in natural light from cleverly positioned skylights. Enter, came a voice from within, aged but powerful, carrying the weight of authority earned rather than bestowed. The dragons have awaited this council for generations. The chamber's interior defied the expectations set by its austere exterior. Rather than the dark cave Naruto anticipated, they entered a soaring space whose walls were lined with luminescent crystals that amplified the natural light. A shallow pool occupied the center, its surface perfectly still and reflective. Around this pool, stone seating formed a complete circle, worn smooth by centuries of use. Seated opposite the entrance was a man whose appearance commanded immediate respect. Though clearly advanced in years, with silver-white hair and weather-lined features, Elder Drake carried himself with the straight-backed dignity of someone for whom age represented accumulation of power rather than its diminishment. His clothing combined traditional Dragon Keeper garments with subtle elements that hinted at his former status in the Hoenn Elite Four. Most striking was the Pokémon curled beside him, a salamence of unusual size and coloration, its scales showing the deeper blue and more pronounced red markings that came only with exceptional age and power. The dragon acknowledged their entrance with a rumbling sound that vibrated the very air of the chamber. Champions of regions divided, Drake greeted, his voice carrying easily across the space. And the sage from the world beyond. The gathering begins as foretold. As they approached, Naruto noticed other figures seated around the pool, village elders of varying ages, each accompanied by dragon-type partners. Their collective presence created a palpable energy within the chamber, resonating with the dragon heart stone in Naruto's pocket. Elder Drake, Diantha began with formal respect. We come seeking answers to questions not yet fully formed, Drake completed her thought. About scattered dragons and ancient promises. About the one who corrupts dragon essence for unnatural purposes. About prophecies long preserved but imperfectly understood. He gestured to empty seats across from him. Join our circle. The water will show what words cannot adequately express. As they settled on the stone seats, Naruto noticed the pool's surface beginning to move, not from physical disturbance but from energy patterns forming beneath its surface. Gibble approached the water's edge cautiously, sniffing with evident curiosity. Your partner recognizes the dragon mirror, Drake observed. A natural formation of minerals and thermal energies that resonates with draconic essence. For thousands of years, dragon keepers have used such pools for communion with ancestral memories. He extended a gnarled hand toward Naruto. The heart stone you carry, place it at the pool's center. Naruto hesitated briefly before removing the crystal from his pocket. The moment it emerged into the open air, every dragon in the chamber responded, scales shifting, eyes focusing. Bodies tensing in recognition of ancient power. Following Drake's instruction, Naruto leaned forward and carefully placed the stone on a small raised platform in the pool's exact center. The sea crystal seemed to hover just above the water's surface, supported by the platform yet appearing to float. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The water began glowing from within, colors shifting through shades of blue, purple, and gold. The surface remained unnaturally still despite the energetic activity beneath, creating a perfect mirror that reflected not the chamber's ceiling but images forming from collective draconic memory. Before the regions were separated, Drake narrated as scenes took shape in the pool, all lands were one continent, and all dragons descended from a single sour. C.E. What legends call the original dragon? The pool displayed a massive creature unlike any Pokémon Naruto had seen, larger than Reshiram or Zekrom, with elements that suggested both yet transcended either. Its form shifted between solid and energy, radiating power that shaped the very landscape around it. Unlike other legendary Pokémon who embodied single principles, time, space, life, death, the original dragon contained balanced dualities, truth and ideal, body and spirit, destruction and creation. This balance made it the natural mediator between all other forces. The image shifted, showing ancient humans approaching the original dragon with reverence, establishing the first bonds. The earliest dragon keepers formed a covenant with this being, not of ownership but of mutual guardianship. Humans would protect dragon sanctuaries, dragons would share their wisdom and power to maintain world balance. Drake's expression darkened as the pool's images changed, showing conflict among humans that escalated until it reached the original dragon itself. Then came the sundering. Two brothers, both favored disciples of dragon lore, fell into irreconcilable conflict. One valued truth above all, the other championed ideals. Their discord resonated with the dual nature of the original dragon, creating internal disharmony where perfect balance had existed. The pool showed the magnificent creature writhing in apparent pain, its form destabilizing as opposing energies within it fought for dominance. Unable to contain contradicting human emotions within its harmonious nature, the original dragon separated. Reshiram embodied truth. Zekrom embodied ideals. A third fragment, empty, purposeless, fell away unnoticed to become Kurum. Cynthia leaned forward, her historian's interest evident. The uneven legend of the twin heroes. Drake nodded. One fragment of a much larger truth. For the sundering did not stop with the three dragons of Unova. The original dragon's essence, its fundamental energy, scattered across what would become separate regions. The pool displayed the ancient continent breaking apart, landmasses drifting to form the modern regions. As they separated, draconic energy manifested differently in each location. In Kanto and Johto, it manifested as the Weather Trio and Tower Guardians. In Hoenn, as the ancient weather powers. In Sinnoh, it influenced the Creation Trio's balance. In Kalos, it transformed through Xernea's and Yveltal's cycle. What had been unified became specialized, localized. Naruto recognized patterns connecting to his vision at Dragonspiral Tower. Pieces of a fragmented history falling into place. This explains the regional isolation, Diantha observed. Not just geographical separation but energetic divergence. Precisely, Drake confirmed. As dragon essence specialized in each region, human cultures followed suit. Trading relationships withered, communication faltered. Eventually, regions developed independently with minimal contact. each believing their understanding of Pokémon was universal rather than regional. The pool's images shifted again, showing scattered points of light across the regions, pulsing with the same energy as the Dragon Heart Stone. When the original dragon separated, fragments of its pure essence crystallized into what became known as Dragon Heart Stones. Most were destroyed during the Great War 3,000 years ago when King Az unleashed power that disrupted all energetic patterns. But some survived, Naruto said, understanding dawning. Hidden or protected, 7 remained, Drake confirmed. Scattered across regions, guarded by those who remembered the original covenant. They awaited the prophesied time when the Dragon Sage would appear to restore what was sundered. The pool's surface rippled for the first time, new images forming with greater intensity. Naruto recognized himself in Sage mode, surrounded by dragons from various regions. Then, disturbingly, the scene shifted to show Kabuto in a laboratory setting, experimenting on captive Pokémon. But prophecies rarely unfold without opposition, Drake continued grimly. The ancient texts speak of a Corrupto, who would emerge before the Sage, one who would twist dragon essence toward unnatural ends, seeking to claim scattered power for dominance rather than reunification. Kabuto, Naruto confirmed. How could prophecies from your world describe someone from mine? Drake's weathered face revealed nothing as he studied Naruto. Perhaps they didn't. Perhaps the role of Corruptor has existed in multiple cycles, with different individuals fulfilling its function. Or perhaps, he paused meaningfully, perhaps your world and ours are not as separate as they appear. This suggestion created a profound silence around the pool, each person processing its implications differently. The boundaries between dimensions have always been permeable at certain points, Cynthia noted, her academic knowledge surfacing. Ultra-space research confirms multiple realities existing parallel to ours. Indeed, Drake agreed, and in times of great energetic disruption, these boundaries weaken further. Why? Our arrival, and the Corruptors before you, coincides with increasing instability in dragon energy across all regions. The pool showed disturbing images, dragon Pokémon becoming agitated worldwide, ancient sites activating with unprecedented energy patterns, weather systems destabilizing along ley lines where dragon essence flowed most strongly. The Great Dragon Scatter created vulnerability in our world's fundamental balance. Drake explained. For centuries, this remained manageable because regionally specialized dragons maintained local harmony. Now, those systems are failing as dragon essence seeks reunification. Is that dangerous? Naruto asked, watching the increasingly chaotic patterns in the pool. Necessary but perilous, Drake answered carefully. Like setting a broken bond. The healing process cannot occur without proper alignment, yet the realignment itself causes pain and disruption. Diantha, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. The Dragonflight Summit, in Blackthorn City next month. It's connected to this, isn't it? Drake nodded approvingly. The first gathering of dragon keepers from all regions in over a century. Not coincidental timing, but response to collective draconic intuition. They sense the approach of potential reunification. And Kabuto, Naruto pressed. How do his activities factor into this prophecy? The pool's surface darkened, images becoming more ominous, showing hybrid creatures like those at Lysandre Cafe, but in greater numbers, positioned at key energy points across regions. The Corruptor seeks to harness reunification energy for transformation rather than restoration, Drake explained. By placing corrupted vessels at convergence points, he could potentially redirect the flow of returning dragon essence, climbing its power rather than allowing natural rebalancing. That aligns with the Mega Evolution research theft, Cynthia observed. Forced transformation without spiritual foundation. Naruto's mind raced, connecting pieces across his experiences since arriving in this world. The hybrid at Lysandre Cafe mentioned a master who predicted my arrival. Kabuto knows about the Dragon Sage prophecy and sees me as a complication to his plans. Or as a resource to be harvested, Drake suggested grimly. Your natural energy abilities, this sage mode, resonates with pure dragon essence in ways no native to our world has achieved. The Corruptor would surely covet such power. The Dragon Heart Stone pulsed suddenly, sending ripples across the previously still pool. The water responded by forming images, showing 7 distinct locations across different regions, each housing a dragon heart stone. The gathering begins, Drake intoned, his voice taking on ritual cadence. 7 stones must reunite before dragons scattered can return to harmony. The sage must walk the path between worlds, neither fully of one nor separate from either. Naruto recognized one location immediately, Dragon Spiral Tower in Unova. Another appeared to be the hidden chamber in Lysandre's vault. The remaining 5 showed locations across other regions, a cave complex, an underwater shrine, a mountain peak, a desert tower, and what appeared to be an ancient tree of enormous size. The heart stones call to each other now that the sage has awakened the first, Drake continued. Their locations reveal themselves to guide your journey. A scavenger hunt while Kabuto builds his forces. Cynthia questioned skeptically. That seems strategically flawed. Drake's ancient salamence rumbled disapprovingly at her tone. But the elder himself remained unperturbed. The stones are not merely objects to collect, champion. They are keys that unlock regional dragon energy. Each stone retrieved restores connection between separated draconic lineages, strengthening the network that will eventually allow harmonious reunification. Meanwhile, Diantha added thoughtfully, gathering the stones creates opportunity to build alliances across regions, dragon keepers, gym leaders, champions united by common purpose. Precisely, Drake confirmed. The journey itself prepares both human and dragon communities for reunification. Without such preparation, the sudden return of original dragon energy could prove catastrophic to systems accustomed to separation. The implications settled over the group like a weighty mantle. What had begun as investigation into Kabuto's activities now revealed itself as something far more profound, a fundamental restructuring of the world's energetic and political systems that had developed over centuries of regional isolation. Naruto felt the enormity of the responsibility, yet also a strange familiarity. Hadn't his role as Jinchuriki and Child of Prophecy in his own world prepared him for exactly this kind of challenge? Bringing harmony to divided systems, helping opposite sides recognize their common origin and purpose. The Dragonflight Summit, he said finally. That's where this truly begins, isn't it? Representatives from all regions gathering where we can explain what's happening and build the necessary alliance. Drake's weathered face showed approval. Your instincts serve you well. Dragon Sage. Blackthorn City's sacred grounds will host the first cross-regional dragon gathering since the Great Scatter began. There, you must present yourself and your purpose to keeper clans who have maintained isolated traditions for generations. Some will resist, Karina warned, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber. Change threatens traditional power structures. Even necessary change. The journey to Blackthorn won't be simple, Drake added. The corruptor will surely attempt to prevent your arrival or corrupt the gathering itself. And retrieving additional heart stones before then would significantly strengthen your position. Naruto exchanged glances with Cynthia and Diantha, reading similar determination in their expressions. Champions accustomed to shouldering responsibility for their regions now faced a challenge that transcended conventional boundaries. I'll need to understand Mega Evolution better, Naruto decided. Quote, if Kabuto's using that research to corrupt dragon energy, I need to comprehend exactly how it works. Diantha nodded. I can demonstrate with Gardevoir. Though not a dragon type, the principles remain consistent across all Mega Evolution. Quote, and I, Cynthia added, can access historical archives regarding dragon heart stones that even Elder Drake may not possess. Sinnoh's Celestic ruins contain ECORDS dating back to the original continental formation. Drake rose from his seat, signaling conclusion of the formal council. Tonight, rest in our village as honored guests. Tomorrow, your paths diverge temporarily before converging at Blackthorn. He fixed Naruto with a penetrating gaze. Dragon Sage, when you sleep, open yourself to ancestral memory. The dragons will show you what human words cannot adequately explain. As they exited the Hall of Elders, afternoon light bathed the village in golden hues. Residents had prepared for their visit, transforming the central gathering tier to a ceremonial space with traditional foods, music, and ritual battle demonstrations between dragon partners. Karina guided them to guest quarters, simple but comfortable dwellings built into the living rock with panoramic views of the valley below. Rest, refresh yourselves, she instructed. The evening ceremony will begin at sunset. Wear these. She presented each of them with ceremonial cloaks bearing traditional dragon scale patterns. You will be formally recognized as dragon friends before the community. Left alone in his quarters, Naruto sat in meditation position on a stone platform extending from the dwelling's edge. Gible curled beside him, unusually calm in this environment that seemed to resonate with its draconic nature. Closing his eyes, Naruto reached for the dragon heart stone. Feeling its energy pulse in harmony with his natural chakra flow. The resonance extended outward, connecting with dragon presences throughout the village and beyond, a network of awareness unlike anything he'd experienced before. And at the furthest edge of his perception, tenuous but unmistakable, he again felt Kurama's distant presence, the Ninetales apparently able to sense him more clearly during moments of heightened spiritual connection. The fox's chakra pulsed in a pattern Naruto recognized as determined encouragement rather than distress. They're still searching, he realized. And getting closer to finding a way through. This brought both comfort and complication. His path in this world was becoming clearer, his purpose defined by prophecy and immediate threat. Yet he knowledge that a way home might eventually present itself created questions he wasn't yet prepared to answer. For now, he focused on the immediate challenge, understanding his role as Dragon Sage and preparing for whatever Kabuto might unleash next. The Dragonflight Summit loomed as both opportunity and potential catastrophe, depending on how events unfolded in the coming weeks. As sunset approached, Naruto donned the ceremonial cloak and descended to the village center where preparations for the evening ritual neared completion. Torch-lit circles defined sacred space while community members gathered in concentric rings according to age and status. Dragon partners of all species positioned themselves alongside their human counterparts, creating a living demonstration of the harmonious relationship this isolated community had maintained for centuries. Cynthia and Diantha joined him at the gathering's edge, similarly attired in ceremonial garments. In this traditional setting, their champion status seemed secondary to their connection with dragons and their role in the unfolding prophecy. Nervous? Diantha asked, noting Naruto's thoughtful expression. Not exactly, he replied. It's more, I've been part of world-changing events before, but never in a world that wasn't originally mine. Yet you adapt with remarkable ease, Cynthia observed. Your connection with Gible, your intuitive understanding of dragon energy, these suggest deeper resonance than mere dimensional transference would explain. Before Naruto could respond, drums began pulsing from the village center, signaling the ceremony's commencement. Elder Drake stood within the innermost circle, his ancient salamence curled protectively around the sacred space. Villagers moved in synchronized patterns. Dancers and dragons performing traditional movements that traced energy flows between human and Pokémon partners. The covenant renewal, Karina explained, appearing beside them. A ritual performed only when dragon history reaches significant juncture points. She gestured for them to follow her toward the central circle. Your participation honors us and fulfills ancient promise. The community parted respectfully as they approached, creating a path directly to Elder Drake. As Naruto moved forward, Gible walking proudly at his side, he noticed something extraordinary. Every dragon present, regardless of species or size, bowed their heads in acknowledgement as he passed. Not submission, but recognition of fundamental connection. When they reached the innermost circle, Drake raised his arms for silence. The drums faded, leaving only the sound of wind through the village and the occasional call of wild Pokémon from the valley below. Witnesses of the covenant, Drake addressed the gathered community, his voice carrying with surprising strength. Tonight we stand at convergence of ancient promise and present necessity. The dragon sage walks among us, as foretold by ancestors who served our traditions through centuries of separation. Murmurs rippled through the gathering, not of skepticism but reverent confirmation, as if Drake merely formalized what many had already sensed. With the sage come champions of divided regions, guardians whose paths converge as scattered dragons hear the call to reunite. He gestured to Cynthia and Diantha, who stood with formal dignity appropriate to the ceremony. Drake turned to face Naruto directly. Dragon Sage, will you accept the ancient burden? To walk between worlds until harmony is restored. To stand against corruption of dragon essence. To reunite what necessity once scattered. The formal question carried weight beyond mere words. Naruto sensed layers of meaning, a binding agreement with consequences that would extend this world to potentially affect his own. Yet refusal seemed impossible in the face of mounting threat and awakening responsibility. I accept this burden freely, he responded, the words feeling simultaneously foreign yet natural on his tongue. Until harmony is restored and corruption defeated. Drake nodded solemnly before turning to Cynthia and Diantha, champions of regions long divided. Will you support the Dragon Sage in this covenant? Will you set aside regional primacy to restore original balance? Sinnoh stands with the Dragon Sage, Cynthia answered formally. Knowledge preserved becomes knowledge shared toward common purpose. Kalos acknowledges the covenant, Diantha added. Separated traditions reunite under ancient promise. At their affirmation, Drake's salamence raised its massive head toward the darkening sky, releasing a roar that echoed across the valley. Every dragon in the village responded in kind, from tiny Dratini to massive Dragonite, creating harmony. Sea resonance that vibrated through stone and air alike. The covenant is renewed, Drake declared as the draconic chorus faded. The path forward opened. May scattered dragons find their way home. From this ritual affirmation, the gathering transitioned to celebration. Food shared, traditional music played, and ceremonial battle dances performed by dragon partners. Naruto found himself welcomed into conversations with village elders and young trainees alike, each eager to share their traditions or hear about his experiences with dragon energy. Later in the evening, Diantha approached where He sat observing a particularly impressive aerial display by village Dragonite and Salamence pairs. You promised to explain Mega Evolution, he reminded her. This seems like an appropriate setting. She nodded, gesturing toward a quieter area away from the main celebration. The demonstration requires space and privacy. Some villagers might find it controversial. They consider Mega Evolution an artificial intrusion on natural dragon development. They walked to a secluded training ground overlooking the valley, where stone platforms provided ideal space for controlled Pokémon demonstration. Cynthia joined them, her historian's interest evident despite her typical reserve. Mega Evolution represents a temporary transcendence of evolutionary limits, Diantha began, removing a delicate chain from beneath her ceremonial garments. At its end hung her keystone, gleaming softly in the moonlight. It requires 3 components. A keystone carried by the trainer, a corresponding mega stone held by the Pokémon. And most importantly, an exceptional bond between them. Gardevoir materialized beside her, the psychic Pokémon's movements mirroring its trainers with ballistic precision. The Gardevoirite embedded in its pendant caught the moonlight, responding to proximity with Diantha's keystone. Unlike normal evolution, which represents permanent developmental progression, Mega Evolution temporarily unlocks potential that exists beyond conventional limits. Diantha's voice took on the quality of someone sharing profound personal experience rather than academic knowledge. The process channels energy through the human-Pokémon bond, using that connection as a stabilizing influence for power that would otherwise prove overwhelming. She extended her hand, touching her keystone with deliberate focus. The emotional foundation matters. Trainers who view their Pokémon as mere tools or weapons can force Mega Evolution through technical means, but the resulting transformation lacks harmony and often causes suffering to the Pokémon. Gardevoir moved to stand before its trainer, a position of trust rather than subordination. The psychic connection between them became visible, as faint luminescence surrounding both figures. When initiated with genuine mutual trust, Diantha continued, Mega Evolution becomes a shared transcendence. Neither trainer nor Pokémon dominates, both elevate together. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. Gardevoir, respond to my heart. Light erupted from both stones simultaneously, connecting in luminous strands that enveloped Gardevoir completely. The Pokémon's form shifted within the cocoon of energy, growing taller, its flowing down expanding into more elaborate formation, its emotional sensitivity horns developing additional projections. When the light subsided, Mega Gardevoir stood before them, its appearance similar yet fundamentally transformed, radiating power that Naruto could perceive even without active Sage mode. The transformation enhances natural abilities while sometimes changing type affiliation or special characteristics, Diantha explained. Mega Gardevoir's psychic powers increased dramatically, blowing perception across dimensional boundaries that would normally remain closed. The mega-evolved Pokémon demonstrated by creating a sphere of psychic energy unlike anything Naruto had seen before. Not just visible light but perceptible emotional resonance given physical form. The state cannot be maintained indefinitely, Diantha continued. It requires constant harmony between trainer and Pokémon, drawing energy from both. Extended periods in mega form can exhaust both partners. With visible mental communication, she instructed Mega Gardevoir through several demonstrations, psychic abilities that manipulated space itself. Defensive barriers that shimmered with prismatic energy, and focused attacks that resembled concentrated emotional force rather than mere elemental power. This is what Kabuto seeks to control, Cynthia observed grimly. Forced evolution without the emotional foundation or energy harmonization. And combined with his genetic manipulation techniques, Naruto added, potentially creating hybrids that maintain mega form permanently through artificial means. Diantha nodded soberly. The research he stole theorized methods for sustaining mega evolution thr. Our artificial energy sources rather than trainer bonds. Team Flare had begun experiments using adaptations of infinity energy, the same power source that fueled the ancient weapon 3,000 years ago. Converting life force into weaponized energy, Cynthia elaborated. Historical records suggest King AZ's weapon absorbed life energy from Pokémon to power its devastating effects. The implications hung heavily between them. Kabuto, with his knowledge of genetic manipulation and life force chakra techniques, could potentially adapt such research to create permanently mega-evolved hybrids powered by harvested life energy, weapons unlike anything this world had experienced since its ancient catastrophe. Thank you for the demonstration, Naruto said after witnessing Gardevoir return to its malform in a gentle cascade of receding energy. It helps me understand what we're potentially facing. As they returned to the main celebration, a commotion at the village entrance caught their attention. A rider had arrived on Dragonback, a woman in distinctive tribal garments that differed from the village's traditional attire. Zinnia, Naruto recognized immediately, the Draconid woman's distinctive energy signature unmistakable even at distance. She dismounted from her dragon, a salamence whose scarred appearance suggested numerous battles, and approached their group with urgent purpose. Her expression, normally composed behind a mask of tribal mystery, showed genuine alarm. Dragon Sage, she greeted Naruto curtly. Champions. The convergence accelerates beyond predicted patterns. Meteor Falls has activated. Activated how? Cynthia asked sharply. Energy patterns dormant for millennia have begun pulsing in sequence, Zinnia explained. The meteorites, those we believe origin, aided from the same cosmic event that first brought dragon essence to our world, are resonating with something. Drawing power from dimensional boundaries. Kabuto, Naruto guessed immediately. He's tempting to harness meteorite energy for his hybrid program. Zinnia's expression confirmed his suspicion. 3 days ago, unknown entities breached our ancestral sanctuary in Meteor Falls. They extracted core samples from the oldest meteorite formation, what we call the Dragon's Tear. Our sentinels tracked them to a facility in Rustboro, but by the time reinforcements arrived, they had vanished. Timeline matches the Lysandre Cafe attack, Diantha noted. Coordinated operations across regions. There's more, Zinnia continued grimly. Dragon Pokémon throughout Hoenn have begun exhibiting unusual behavior, gathering at ancient sites, performing ritual movements unseen for generations. The Draconid elders believe they sense the Dragon Sage's awakening and are responding to ancestral memory. This matched what they'd learned from Elder Drake about increasing instability in regional dragon energy patterns. The prophecy was unfolding more rapidly than anticipated, events accelerating toward convergence that would require careful management to prevent catastrophe. The Dragonflight Summit becomes even more crucial, Cynthia stated. Representatives from all regions must understand what's happening before regional dragon populations begin moving en masse. Blackthorn City in 1 week, Zinnia confirmed. Draconid representatives from all surviving tribes will attend, the largest gathering in centuries. Lance of the Indigo Plateau has extended formal invitation to all regional champions and dragon specialists. The conversation continued late into the night, planning and strategy discussions that eventually migrated to Elder Drake's private council chamber. Maps were consulted, communication arrangements made, and security protocols established for their journey to Johto and the critical Dragonflight Summit. It was nearly dawn when Naruto finally returned to his quarters, mentally processing the day's revelations and tomorrow's challenges. Gibble had long since fallen asleep, curled contentedly on the dwelling's sleeping platform. As exhaustion finally claimed him, Naruto's last conscious thought acknowledged the irony of his situation. He who had once been Konoha's most unpredictable ninja now found himself at the center of an ancient prophecy in a world not his own, tasked with reuniting powers scattered across dimensions. Kurama, he thought toward the tenuous connection he'd felt earlier. If you can hear me across worlds, tell everyone I'm alive. Tell them I've found purpose here, but I haven't forgotten home. Whether the message reached its intended recipient remained unknown as consciousness faded into dreams filled with dragons soaring between worlds, carrying messages across dimensional boundaries that humans could barely comprehend. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.